All right, meatards. We're back. We're back. How's my audio, guys? It's been a while. I don't think I've done a live stream for like a month. It's been far too long. What's up, everyone? Where's my mod squad? Got illiberal autist here. Yeah, I had to do my hair, guys. I'm sorry. Took me way too long. No, I was just preparing all these links and touching base with Dave Feldman. Shout out to Dave Feldman, cholesterolcode.com. Dave's going to come on. We're going to talk about cholesterol. We're going to talk about labs. I got some of my lab work here. Got my cholesterol checked again yesterday, or was it 2 days ago? The days, they all blend into one. But I got some more blood work done. We're going to talk a little bit about that later. But first, let's do some administrative stuff. And let's say hi to everybody out there. Don Mateo, what's up, man? Mel Transforms says, or Mel Transforma likes that I spent the extra time on my hairdo. Why is lab work so important, says somebody. I don't put a huge impetus on lab work. I don't really think that lab work is the most important thing in the world. We could talk about some of that a little bit later, my thoughts on what these labs mean. Obviously, they don't mean nothing, right? But what you're looking at with lab work, you're looking at a snapshot in time of blood levels of certain nutrients or hormones or inflammatory compounds or your lipid profile. Now, we're going to talk to Dave Feldman a little bit later on the meaning of cholesterol, what the heck cholesterol does, and why it's floating through our blood all dang day. Luisela Serrano says, hey, Tristan, all these years in Ecuador, do you speak any Spanish already? What do you think? Been in Ecuador for 8 years. Why would I live somewhere if I don't speak the language? All right, Chris Curran says it, and that's actually a cool question though, because I do have a Spanish YouTube channel, but I haven't uploaded any content to it yet. We've got our book in Spanish as well. So the Ketogenic Edge cookbook in Spanish, it's what is it called in Spanish? La dieta ketogénica de vanguardia, I think it's called in Spanish. But yeah, we're gonna actually put in some work on the Spanish YouTube channel soon and start putting out some content concerning keto for Spanish audiences out there, for the Latin American folks out there watching. But anyways, it's been a long time. Guess what happened just yesterday? Everybody's favorite heretic doctor, Dr. Shawn Baker, got his coronary artery calcium score. Coronary artery calcium score. Now, that is essentially a scan of your heart. There is some radiation exposure involved with a coronary artery calcium exam, which I probably would have gotten mine just to piss the vegans off. But I haven't gotten a coronary artery calcium score. I'm 31 years old and just really not so keen on radiating my body. It's not a massive amount of radiation, but it is radiation nonetheless. Not as much as like a chest x-ray, I believe, but a CAC exam. Really glad that Shawn Baker got his. And his results, what did he get on it? He got a 0, you guys. He got a 0. Meaning 0 calcium, 0 calcification in Dr. Shawn Baker's arteries. Has been eating nothing but steaks and meat for the last 2 years. Before that, he was on a high-fat diet for at least 5 years. I mean, eating meat his entire life. Was eating a mixed carnivorous diet for his whole life, right? Humans being obligate carnivores, never having more than a couple generations living without animal-based foods, and the health results have been disastrous for those who have tried to go without animal-based foods. Obviously there's outliers, right? I've got a picture right here of a man's man, Dr. Greger, clearly thriving on a vegan diet. I mean, look at him next to this 9-year-old girl. Let's be fair. I know that it might look like this 9-year-old girl arms are larger than Dr. Greger, but she did have a pump. She was doing some biceps curls before they took this picture, and she kind of out-angled him as well. So, yeah. Anyways, I did not get my CAC exam yet. Maybe someday I will, but I did get a carotid artery exam, and my carotid artery is perfectly clean, right? So I have elevated cholesterol, as many people on a ketogenic diet, when you're on a fat-burning metabolism, do have. Dave Feldman talks about something called the lean mass hyper-responder, where you've got high HDL, low trigs, high LDL cholesterol. Now, we're going to talk about the context of this a little bit later on in the second hour. That's going to be fun. But, whoa, got a big old fat super chat. All right, Jason Shields. Thanks a lot for the super chat, man. It says, just wanted to thank you, Tristan. I have cerebral palsy, and keto and now carnivore have changed my life. I've learned so much from you and your lovely wife. Keep up the work, the good work against the vegan agenda. Former vegan here. Well, that's awesome, man. I'm touched. Jason, you know, my uncle, who just passed away a few weeks ago, had cerebral palsy. He wasn't supposed to live past his teenage years. My grandma took care of him her entire life. He was immobile most of his life. So, you know, cerebral palsy is serious, and the pain that, people are experiencing and the level of suffering there is pretty staggering. So I thank you, man. Really appreciate the support. Really appreciate you watching, and stay in touch, man. Shoot me an email, Tristan@primaledgehealth.com. Jason, if you shoot me an email sometime, man. I'd love to hear about your story. I'm really glad you're doing well. I'm sure you feel astronomically better eating animal-based foods coming from a vegan diet, because this is just getting in proper human nutrition, getting in the fat-soluble vitamins we need. My protein comes from things from things that have eyes or come from a shell. Protein doesn't come from powders or plants. All right, so there's not been a human population in the history of the world who's lived without animal-based foods or fats at all. Until now. Until we become so decadent, brainwashed, and ideologically broken that we're able to be propagandized into eating these inhumane diets. So, let's talk Shawn Baker's coronary artery calcium exam. Now, it's pretty funny when you watch the build-up of some of these things on the internet. It's actually really hilarious. So I titled this one, what did I title this? I titled this Dr. Shawn Baker's Heart versus Dr. Joel Kahn's Mental Yoga. So Dr. Joel Kahn, the aptly named vegan doctor, he's a cardiologist. He's been around for a while. He was on, what's that guy, Rich Roll? That guy's vegan podcast. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast at some point. And apparently he's going to be on Joe Rogan's podcast again. Dr. Joel Kahn. Giddy boomer. Just so excited to get on Joe Rogan's podcast again. It's funny. If you guys go follow Joel Kahn on Twitter if you want to see one of the funniest dudes on Twitter. And just a perfect example of why most boomers should just stay off the internet. Not all boomers should stay off the internet. Some know how to navigate it. But there's a certain subsect of boomers, the certain subsect of soy latte sipping, New York or Los Angeles boomer that really should just stay off of social media and Twitter. And Joel Kahn's a perfect example of that. So Joel Kahn and Dr. Shawn Baker had all these funny engagements on Twitter. Joel Kahn actually, he's one of the only people that have ever blocked me on Twitter. I have very few tweets at all. But one of those tweets got Dr. Joel Kahn to block me, which is unfortunate because he kept on responding to my tweets, and eventually he blocked me. So he would come to my page, respond to my tweets, and then he blocked me. So this is actually what he blocked me for. Joel Kahn, well, we'll get into that later. We'll get into the Joel Kahn blocking of me in a little bit. But let's talk about this funny little Twitter battle going on here between these vegan ideologues preconceived notions, they're faulty assumptions that meat is the most terrible thing in the world, that animal products are destroying the environment, destroying your heart, destroying our health. And the massive gulf, the massive divide between their ideology and the reality of what's really going on here. So Shawn Baker was going to go get his coronary artery calcium exam, which Joel Kahn has said so many times is the most important test to get to see if you're doing good as far as heart disease progression goes. Heart disease, cancer being the number one killers of vegans and vegetarians as well as the normal population. People who actually have heart attacks, and all the studies of people who have actually experienced heart attacks, there's no correlation between high cholesterol and heart attacks, but there is a correlation between survival rates, whereas the people who have high cholesterol survive more from the coronary artery events that they do have. Those are all facts that can be easily confirmed. There's a lot of epidemiological studies that these vegans like to cherry pick and promote in order to promote their agenda, which is ideologically and religiously based. And here's an article, Diet, Heart, and New Markers for Atherosclerosis. So in this article right here, he talks about the coronary artery calcium score and how it is the most important marker. All right, 194-year-old lesson talking about the CAC for at-risk or older patients. So Dr. Joel Kahn promoting CAC, so important, so important. Number one piece of advice he gives after the death of Bob Harper. Or did Bob Harper die? I don't know. I don't even know who Bob Harper is. So, the vegans, they love to talk about the celebrities, right? All the celebrities. It's all about celebrity endorsement. You got Pamela Anderson supporting PETA. You've got all these celebrities talking about how enlightening it is to go vegan. Go vegan for enlightenment. Crazy. But, all right. So, talking about Bob Harper's heart disease. And number one piece of advice from Joel Kahn, ask for a coronary artery calcium score. Number one piece of advice from him. Now, it's funny because leading up to this, we also had Dr. Eric Berg. Dr. Eric Berg had a coronary artery calcium score exam done as well, and he got 0. He eats bacon and eggs for breakfast, been on keto diet for several years. Not sure how many years now. But people were putting out videos, like Goji Man put out a video saying, let me see if I could find the video. Goji Man put out this video saying it doesn't matter that this doctor had a coronary artery calcium score of 0. And the reason being that there's another test, the CIMT, which is a more advanced test that will measure soft plaque. So you're already seeing this mental gymnastics now. Well, maybe these carnivores are getting 0 on their coronary artery calcium exam, even though they have elevated cholesterol. Maybe all their inflammatory markers are going down. Maybe they're getting off of their medications. Maybe they're feeling better, looking better, and feeling healthier than ever. And by every single biomarker except LDL cholesterol, they've improved their health. But it doesn't count because there's some new test that we've got to do. So now what you're going to see is you're going to see a slew of these vegan response videos in the next 48 hours, none of which I will probably watch, but I'm sure Mick the Vegan and Happy Healthy Vegan Ryan and Klaus from Plant-Based News, with all the celebrities, they're going to talk about how the coronary artery calcium score is now useless. Whereas just a week ago, it was the greatest thing in the world. We can't wait. You guys are all going to die of heart attacks. So you're going to see a lot of mental gymnastics going on here, a lot of self-contradictory behavior on the internet, just like is typical of a lot of these ideologues. And so, yeah, it's funny to see guys like Joel Kahn. So Joel Kahn, I recommend that Dr. Joel Kahn evacuate the internet immediately because he's just not cut out for it. So we've got Dr. Shawn Baker made this post, 2018 study, 220,000 people, 50 countries, and the results indicate meat, dairy, good for the heart. Guess you don't need to be a brain-shrinking vegan munching on tofu to avoid heart disease. So there's a post from Instagram, I guess. And Dr. Joel Kahn jumps in there to save the day. Which almost everything that Baker posts on Instagram, if you follow Dr. Shawn Baker, almost everything he posts, Joel Kahn jumps up on it right away. Joel Kahn, who's got, let's see, Joel Kahn, he's tweeted 42.5 thousand times. That's pretty incredible, dude. Joel Kahn has tweeted 42.5 thousand times. I mean, hard-working doctor here, right, guys? Working so hard to get little 10-second clips on TV, working so hard on his books like Vegan Sex, Vegans Do It Better, with a picture of a banana and 2 apples looking like a phallus. The Plant-Based Solution, the lovely fear-mongering title, Dead Execs Don't Get Bonuses, right? So marketing to insecure people who are not getting laid, right? Marketing to the vegan incel market, which is a huge fucking market. Like, the vegan incel market is massive. If you want to tap into that shit, you will make some cash. You will make some major cash. Also, let's see. All right, so that's Dr. Joel Kahn's work, 42,000 tweets. I think that's really impressive. But if you look at the content of this dude's tweets, it's actually really, really funny. His behavior is fucking hilarious. So Joel Kahn jumps in there, responds to Shawn Baker, and says, if we ever need a role model of animals experiencing terror, pain, and distress, and that legacy being transferred to the human soul by ingesting that pain, you are the alpha asshole. I actually think your work is interesting. Pre-diabetic, but interesting. Try science method. So just rife with misspellings, but just right off the bat, insulting. Calls him the alpha asshole, right? So right off the bat, insulting him. Let's see. And then his next comment, personal growth and radical acts of kindness can help. Loka namasta sukhima batanka. To all my relations. Aho. Come to the medicine circle. Come to the medicine. Like, dude, this is it's too funny. So I mean, and it goes on and on and on. Talking about personal growth and radical acts of kindness and how awesome it is. After he calls this dude an asshole. So this is like the typical Joel Kahn. It's like he runs in there insulting, being super inflammatory, and then he finishes with taking a fake moral high ground because I'm a vegan, I'm kind, and I'm sweet. So it's and then of course appealing to Eastern spirituality, Om Namah Shivaya at the end, Loka Namasta Sukhima Bhavantu. Yeah. Stop raping cows to inseminate, he says. So it's just this constant appeal to the extreme vegan abolitionist, social justice warrior rhetoric. Stop raping cows, right? Like, just the most nonsensical, self-refuting things that anybody could say. We got 10 cows up at our land right now. They roam, they eat grass. We're going to kill one of them soon, and we're going to eat those cows. These cows drink better water than Dr. Joel Kahn does. They breathe better air than Dr. Joel Kahn. The atheist living in New York City, constantly appealing to these Eastern religions, even though the guy's an atheist Jew living in New York, constantly pretending that he's this spiritually enlightened vegan. Really, really funny shit. So, here's another funny little interaction from one of the biggest hypocrites in the vegan movement, Dr. Joel Kahn, who he's going to be debating. What's his guy? Chris Kresser. So Chris Kresser, who's actually pretty well versed, pretty intelligent guy, very kind. Chris Kresser's really nice. If I were like debating someone like Joel Kahn, it'd be so hard not to just laugh in their face and call them out for what they are. But Chris Kresser, real nice guy, real sweet dude. He's gonna be debating Dr. Joel Kahn, the con artist, on Joe Rogan. So it's sure to be boring as shit. But we'll get to see nihilist Buddhist Dr. Joel Kahn talking about stopping raping cows. It's supposed to be a debate about health, but let's be honest, there is no debate for health from the vegan perspective. If you look at any of these vegan activists, these vegan hacktivists, with their revolution, the vegan revolution, check this photo out. Right? Here's the vegan revolution incarnate right there. This is the perfect example. Be kind to animals. They're like $100 t-shirt. Be kind to animals. Activism comes in so many forms. Look at this like fake punk rocker with his like cutely trimmed beard up in the front. Vegan army. This poor little malnourished girl, putting her up in the front. Revolution. It's a faux revolution. It's a faux revolution funded by big money, by huge grain manufacturers, by consolidated seed companies like Monsanto, and the biggest grain manufacturer, or the biggest grain exporter and grain company in the world, Cargill, is heavily involved in promoting plant-based protein powders and all these processed junk foods that are being fed to the soyum as we are degenerated in body, in mind, in culture, and as the family is further demonized and attacked, as fertility is being attacked as something negative and bad for the earth, we get these people marching around in the streets pretending to be cute and tough and cool and edgy, right? No one's protesting wars anymore, right? No one's asking why bombs are being dropped on countries. What happened with Gaddafi, right? Where were all these vegans when Gaddafi was being sodomized in the street with knives? Where are these vegans with all these new military actions? What are they called? They're not called wars anymore, right? What's the new the new Orwellian term for wars? They're not occupations. We're liberate, the liberation. All right, so then we got the liberation of the animals happening next. The liberation of animals by the military, industrial, pharmaceutical, agricultural complex. So Joe Kahn, Shawn Baker put up this picture of, Dr. Greger, who is the vegan Ubermensch, clearly. Dr. Greger, major proponent of veganism, major proponent of vegan diets, and this other lady, bite-sized vegan, who stripped herself nude and got branded in this weird sadomasochistic like S&M ritual, so-called vegan street activism. My dog, you hear the dog over there, Daisy's going. So this poor woman, just totally, shattered in her psyche. The vegan activist, 33 years old, right? I'm 31 years old. That woman's 33. It's just amazing. It's mind-boggling that people will do this in the name of so-called animal rights. Right, these same people who live in human zoos in L.A., San Francisco, and New York, never been involved in producing their own food, never been involved in procuring their own food. Just amazing. These are the people telling us what's healthy, right? So Joel Kahn responds to this is simple tweet: 35 years old, 33 years old, 45 years old, long-term vegans. I'm not convinced it's about health. Valid point, right? Like, just look at this picture. It is obviously not about health. It's about, for most of these people, an ideological obsession with feeling validated by your worldview and desperately clinging on to something to give them meaning in this nihilist world that we've been given, where the family unit has been broken down, where meaning and truth have been destroyed, and where people parade around pretending to be enlightened by starving themselves to death. Long-term vegans, I'm not concerned it's about health. And here's Joel Kahn's response. You are a truly ugly human, spreading hate. I feel bad for you. Rather than promote your diet plan, or God forbid, organize research, you just create a vulgar divide. Kindness is so much more enjoyable. Try it for even 24 hours. So enlightened. You are truly ugly. You truly are an ugly human, he says. So, crazy, right? So, he insults his lab work. Obviously, I've shown my lab work several times on my channel. Show my lab work all the time. None of these vegans criticize mine. Of course, they say, oh, your cholesterol is off the charts. And then they say, oh, your perfectly clean carotid arteries, those don't matter. All your inflammatory markers being super low. Your CRP being 0.2. your hemoglobin A1C being 5.3 and then 5.1. And then I think it was like 4.5 once. So just Don't talk about that. Just cherry picking, beating up on Shawn Baker's labs. No one talks about mine. So then you get and then he tags Joe Rogan. Watch at Joe Rogan. You will see all the data. More important, my CIMT, CAC's microbiome, genome. Had those big guys, blind without. So, Shawn Baker just did get his CAC, and it's perfectly clean. What Joel Kahn says is, it doesn't matter. What does he say? Joel Kahn said, coronary disease develops over years. You are to be congratulated for starting at a good point. Finish at a good point, too. 89 years old, too. And then he shows someone else's coronary artery score. So, and then he made another tweet, which I don't have it pulled up right now, basically saying that it takes time for cancer and heart disease. Just wait. Responding to someone else about Shawn Baker's lab. So wishing cancer and heart disease on people in the name of enlightenment, right? In the name of kindness. Calling him a truly ugly person. And then continuously tagging Joe Rogan. He tags Joe Rogan all the time. It's pretty funny. You're a truly ugly human spreading hate. All right, let's see. Some of the responses to this are funny. I can't find it. Anyways, I think later on in this conversation, or maybe it was a different one, Shawn Baker just recommended perhaps a safe space is something you should seek to avoid further emotional turmoil from my pointing out the lunacy of the vegan propaganda. To which Joel Kahn says, "You're on your phone, I am on mine, not sure what safe space means." And this is when I got blocked. I said it's a place where hilarious behavior like this are lauded as brilliant, and your self-refuting worldview and absurd vegan religion are consistently reinforced by other malnourished ideologue future ex-vegans clinging to their new sense of meaning and identity. And I said, insert predictable response of easily refuted reference to Seventh-day Adventist epidemiology, China study, or appeal to celebrities and Game Changers documentary, or even better, vegans get better boners. Look at this picture of fat in blood, pseudoscience below. And then he blocked me. So that was after he was following my page and responding to almost all of my tweets for a few days. The valiant Dr. Kahn didn't like being called out for this inanity. So there you go. You're going to see in the next few days some more mental gymnastics from a lot of these vegan ideologues talking about why it is so useless now to get a coronary artery exam. So you're going to hear people say, you got to get a CIMT, which is a much more expensive procedure, which I don't even know the prevalence of it. I don't even know if you can get this one in Ecuador. But yeah, that's what we're likely to see here. Here's some more of Dr. Joel Kahn. Just one of the most intellectually dishonest propagandists out there. He's trying to make Joel Kahn, in Joel Kahn's mind, he wants to be like the Neil deGrasse Tyson of veganism. He wants to be like the Bill Nye the Science Guy of veganism. So he speaks in tweets essentially, and it's like, you see these politicians or these ideologues like Michael Eric Dyson and people like this who are constantly trying to get that 10-second clip where they sound really right. That's Joel Kahn. That's Joel Kahn's whole shtick. So here he is talking about diet with Rich Roll.
Once you refine it, you may end up with only fat. So all foods have the 3 macronutrients. I don't think there's any exception to that, maybe different percentages. So a low-carb diet, of course, many of them continue to eat a decent amount of greens in their diet, but they're eliminating all the whites and they're hyper-vigilant about it. The big difference in the ketogenic diet, are you doing high-fat, low-carb, low-protein, which we can talk about, and with a plant-based approach may actually have some benefit in science, or are you doing a low-carb, high-fat, and high-protein diet, which probably ages you quicker than any other diet on the planet, and that isn't always parsed out in their conversation. So the scary skeleton in the ketogenic diet closet is you'll lose weight, you may have some boost in energy for a period of time, you may be increasing your mortality risk. And they just don't talk about that with great regularity.
So it gives no reason why you're increasing your mortality risk. Just says, oh, it's high protein, and high protein is bad, right? So absolutely no evidence out there whatsoever that so-called high protein is detrimental to the human body in any way. People will make appeals to mTOR. They'll talk about how it's really bad because mTOR is bad. They'll talk about what else? IGF-1 and stuff like that. None of this has ever been proven in human studies at all. None of this is solid science at all. So more fear-mongering, just, consistent throwing out there of fear, right, concerning meat. And when that doesn't work, what they resort to is the feely-good stuff, right? The fake moral high ground argument. Which in the internet, when we used to be able to say whatever we want on the internet, you would call it something else. So the fake moral high ground argument, which I would much rather say the other word that you get in trouble for because you can't say shit anymore. You can't say anything on the internet without getting deplatformed. But yeah, this fake moral high ground position that he takes is usually after the scientific approach breaks down, because there is no solid science for removing all animal foods from your diet whatsoever. When you look at the longest lived populations in Japan, they're eating so much freaking pork, right? This whole thing about the blue zones, they don't eat meat, is such nonsense. Anybody who's ever been to Greece, anybody who's ever been to Japan, who's ever been to Asia has seen how much animal food these people are eating, how much fish is being eaten on the coast, how much pork's being consumed in Japan. The longest living populations in Japan, there was a study from 1992 looking at not retirement homes, but old folks' homes. The longest living people in Japan all had high cholesterol and all had high intake of saturated fat. So, kind of nonsensical that we would be fear-mongering about these things, but always going back to the China study, which has been so conclusively debunked and torn to shreds, but these people erect it like it's a demigod. Right, so let's see what else he says.
I've never seen this. 250 to 750. During the 2 months he did a meat-only diet, trying to approximate what he was hearing on these, Rogue, not Rogan kind of podcasts. And it's insanity, and it's like religious fervor and follow the leader without thoughtfulness. The only medical condition that has any data, everybody can verify this, PubMed.com, put in ketogenic diet, refractory epilepsy in children and to some degree adults have a number.
Okay, so that's complete bullshit. For type 2 diabetes remission, ketogenic diets have been shown in many, many studies to be incredibly effective, been shown to be incredibly effective for hunger control and for fat loss. So, just really, really funny. How these people are consistently going back to this mudslinging about meat. Meat is bad. Meat is not good. Meat is not good. Let's see. All right. They changed how chat works. Top chat, live chat. Am I not signed in? Okay. So. Alright. We get plenty of trolls on here. Some people just like to come on and bitch and cry. You get all sorts of little trolls. You get subtle trolls. You get overt trolls. But, across the board, you get banned trolls. So, you're out of here. All right, let's see. Make sure I'm still streaming. Still streaming, still good? All right, so Dr. Joel Kahn, incredibly intellectually dishonest, out here and confusing, saying a ketogenic diet is an all-meat diet, which not necessarily true. You can do a ketogenic diet that's completely animal-based, which I've actually been doing for quite a while now. And it can be very, very healthy and very, very helpful. In fact, there have been clinical research in Hungary by Paleomedicina, this group, and they put into remission this 9-year-old's type 1 diabetes. And he's been completely insulin-free for a long time now. Many people as well. So it's like this, the fear-mongering against cholesterol, it's just insanity. When you look at the actual associations, which we're going to talk about a lot of this stuff later with with Dave Feldman, who's an engineer, coming at this from an engineering standpoint, Super clever guy, so I can't wait to talk to him. But yeah, I mean that's kind of just the the typical anti-meat line that gets pushed. Usually involves, first of all, misrepresenting scientific literature, then doing straw man arguments against this fake opponent, saying that ketogenic diet's a high meat diet, or ketogenic diet is this diet and meat is bad, and just completely confusing the audience with all sorts of gibberish. And so I mean, really, what we're looking at is a lot of ideology, and religious fervor for diets, justifying people's ridiculous mental gymnastics. And of course, but for Dr. Joe Kahn, it's mental yoga, because he's so spiritual, guys. Namaste, Dr. Kahn. There's some boomers who just shouldn't be on the internet. Right. So, but congratulations to Dr. Shawn Baker. I think it's really cool that he shares all his labs. Right. So, I mean, I don't really see Dr. Joe Kahn sharing his labs. I do see Dr. Joe Kahn making funny tweets about his amazing fitness now. Like, so since he's been about to go on Joe Rogan, just this constant barrage of these. Look, there he goes. Like, every picture, he's wearing the Joe Rogan shirt, and he tags Joe Rogan. Another one. Wearing my Joe Rogan shirt. So, let's see. I mean, if you were just to go through here and count how many times he tags Joe Rogan, it's pretty funny. That's fine. He posted some funny. There you go. Here's Joe Kahn, just hardcore working out.
41 years ago.
Wait.
Last piece of meat. 41 years ago. Not dead yet. Joe Rogan Experience 927.
That's pretty cute, right? I like his well thought out outfit too. This dude's probably got like in his flat in New York, he's got like a whole closet full of this. Like, dude, what did? I'm pretty sure this is from the Bruce Springsteen concert. This outfit, he pulled it out of his closet. This was the outfit that he wore to a Bruce Springsteen concert in 1985 when he when he proposed to his wife. So I think that's really cool that he saved his outfit. So he's like obsessed with Joe Rogan. He's constantly tagging him. Let's find some more. Let's look down. Like every 10 tweets or so, he's got to tag Joe. So it would be maybe moderately entertaining to see Chris Kresser and how he handles the intellectual dishonesty of Joe Kahn, who's constantly talking about how amazing vegan foods are. Vegans get better boners. Just complete nonsense like this. Like, vegans do it better is his book, with a picture of a banana looking like a phallus. That's fine. He's had some more of these videos of him working out lately. Always quite entertaining. I can't find it. I don't really want to scroll. Of course, the great Dr. Ornish, Dean Ornish, MD. Kim Williams, MD. All right. So, what's up, everybody? Let's come over here. Let's look at the comments. How's everybody doing out there? People are stoked to see Dave. Dave's coming on in a few minutes. It's going to be awesome. Andrew Scarborough, what's up, man? What's up, Andrew? So, yeah, some people are commenting on Dr. Berg having me on his channel, which was really cool. Dr. Berg's a cool guy. Like, look, you don't have to agree with everything that everybody says. But just from talking to Dr. Berg, having personal conversations with the guy, he actually cares about helping people. And what I really like about Dr. Berg is he's open to different ideas, right? I know he promotes eating 7 to 10 cups of vegetables per day. I don't even eat any vegetables right now. I'm not against vegetables. We got a whole section in our book showing you how to make, fermented vegetables, how to ferment vegetables. We do use vegetables in our book. We ate a lot of vegetables for the first few years on our ketogenic diet. But we also got a whole chapter on organ meats. So we show you how to make heart, kidney, liver. So that the book is actually available in print. But I like that he had me on to talk about organ meats, to talk about the importance of organs, and so I really appreciate him having me on and having me, sharing our work on his platform. And I think it hopefully will be good for his audience. Get some different perspective. Maybe, just maybe, the plants aren't doing as much as we think they're doing to benefit our health. Perhaps it's more of what they're replacing that's important, right? So, some people, there's a lot of little sects within every dietary thing, right? You get people who are super against not eating vegetables, right? You get people... You can get people who are like, vegetables are freaking devil. Vegetables are terrible. They're going to kill you. I'm not on either one of those extremes, right? I don't eat vegetables right now. I seem to feel better without them. But I know other people who prefer to eat vegetables, who feel better with them. So, is what it is. So yeah, thanks to Dr. Berg for shouting us out and for having me on your channel. What's up, Nicole? What's up, Boxa? July 11th. What's up, everybody? Let's see. I had a bunch more stuff pulled up here, but we just talked about the intellectual dishonesty of Dr. Joel Kahn for way too long. Let's see. One more. Here, I'll add properties. I'm trying to find. I've got this window pulled up, and I've got some interesting videos, which I would like to share with all y'all right now. Here we go. So we got Goji Man, the Gojinator. So Goji Man, hashtag Ask Goji Man. I'm in the process of purchasing my credibility, and when I'm done purchasing my credibility, I will be saying the same thing I'm saying right now, which completely contradicts everything I'm learning about when I'm getting my master's in nutrition. Goji Man. Oxalates, salicylates, histamine. My head is falling over when I talk. Come pick it up because my neck is so fragile. Goji Man, this is before Shawn Baker even put out his labs. He made a video saying it doesn't matter, it means nothing that Dr. Berg has a 0 CAC on his coronary artery calcium exam, has 0 calcification in his arteries.
Just watched a Dr. Berg video, the keto doctor who eats eggs and bacon for breakfast, and he has just released his CT results and has a 0 coronary artery calcification.
So pissed.
Score.
Look how triggered
he is.
How could this
be if he eats so much cholesterol every day? Great question. Let's get to it. Roll the titles.
Medical disclaimer.
Welcome back. It's good to see you all again. If you haven't met before, then hi, I'm Goji Man. I'm currently studying for a Master's in Nutrition and qualifying as a nutritionist. And next year, I'll be studying for a PhD in nutritional science.
And just for the record, so what he's learning when he's studying for his so-called Master's in Nutrition, none of it is vegan. So he's going in there with his preconceived notion. He's learning, and then he's going to use his degree to leverage and push the ideology. Exactly what Dr. Joel Kahn admits to have done. Joel Kahn converted to veganism at 21 years old. Out of religious sentiment, right? Trying to be all spiritual. Religious sentiment, atheist, grew up without a family in New York probably. I don't know anything about him, but, converted to veganism for feeling. And then became a doctor to justify his ideology and use it to push and try to become a celebrity and try to pretend he's Bill Nye, the vegan guy, on TV. And you got Goji Mouse doing the same thing.
Plant-based nutrition videos every other day in which I answer your health questions under the hashtag Ask
Coronary artery.
And this is really detect a computer tomography angiography, or CTA as it's known. Now the reason for this is that the CTA shows a greater granularity of what's occurring in the lumen and vessel walls, and this is really important because it massively improves the detection of both calcified and non-calcified plaques. And let me just say that again because it's a really important distinction. The CTA massively improves the detection of both calcified and non-calcified plaques. Now, the reason that CTA was developed was that a high proportion of those with 0 calcium scores go on to have heart attacks. Now, I will get into the science behind this very shortly, but
Okay, so basically saying doesn't matter. CAC doesn't matter at all. You're still going to get a heart attack. So more mental gymnastics. Let's see. Let's fast forward a little bit. Sorry, it's really boring to listen to some of these guys talk.
Diet that I don't agree with. So before I jump into the science of why his results mean very little, I want to reiterate that this is not a bitter vegan attack. My health is my greatest asset, so if Dr. Berg had a 0 test result using the CTA test method, then I would be paying particular attention to his diet and maybe looking at it in a different light. But herein lies the problem. So in 2008 in this study, Henneman et al. Showed that 39% of patients with a 0 calcium artery score had non-calcified plaques in their arteries. So these people had taken the same test as Dr. Berg and given the all clear. They then went on to develop heart disease symptoms.
So then if Shawn Baker were to get the CIMT and be sure they had no soft plaque, I'm sure there'd be some other mental gymnastics. Well, it was just an outlier. It doesn't matter. I can't tell you how many of my clients I've had that after like 3 to 4 years of working with me, after getting on a keto diet and maintaining it for years, have done a CAC and gotten a 0 score. This is super common. Obviously, it's anecdotal, right? But I've had several clients over the last few months, especially after I published my carotid artery exam, where my carotid artery is perfect. I've had several clients who have shown me their coronary artery calcium exam score of 0 after doing long-term high-fat, very, very high cholesterol diets. Many of these people have elevated cholesterol as well, might be in the hyper-responder category. So, yeah, it's we got to take this guy seriously though, right? Milk causes 37% of all breast cancer. Here is how, he says. Top 3 reasons why vegans return to eat meat. What it's like being vegan, dude. Then here's some science right here. Atherosclerosis. Scary picture, guys. Here's a scary picture. This is vegan. It's all clean. Vegetarian, less clean. Meat eater. Look like a snot rocket about to come out of that freaking vein right there. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, Goji, man. I'm really not impressed with these mental gymnastics and these vegan apologetics going on here. But anyways, guys, it's been a while since I've done a live stream. Haven't been on the live stream. Been doing the Keto and Carnivore Collective this month, which has been awesome. Kasumi Chris, she's in the group. She's having fun. You know, the Keto and Carnivore Collective, it's our way where we can do group community-based coaching we can do it not without, but rather we can handle more clients and give it in a community-based setting where people can actually interact with each other. One of the things that I've noticed in all of our keto collectives and just from all the clients we get in general over the years, one of the biggest mistakes people make when doing a low-carb diet, first of all, is under-eating protein. Under-eating protein, not overeating protein. People are afraid of protein. We've been duped into thinking that protein is bad, that protein's going to spike your blood sugar, that protein's going to create runaway gluconeogenesis. So that's one of the big ones. A lot of people come, especially women who have been afraid to eat protein. They come to us, come to the Keto Collective. We show them how to actually properly formulate their diet, how to get sufficient protein, which you're more at risk of getting insufficient protein than getting too much protein. There's very few people in the world who are going to overdo it on protein on a ketogenic diet. So that's number one. Number two, the second thing that a lot of people screw up on is sodium, right? Sodium intake. So when the body is low in insulin, the kidneys are told to excrete sodium. The body excretes that sodium. You lose water weight when you first start out a ketogenic diet. And it's very important to replace them electrolytes to get the sodium in. Speaking of electrolytes, on a ketogenic diet for 5.5 years, maybe even more now. Ketogenic diet for quite a while now. Where's those labs? Everything's all mixed up. There we go. Let's see. So ketogenic diet for about 5 years. Then carnivorous diet for the last about 1.5 years with very low vegetables, but for the last 6 months, it's been no vegetables at all. Some cacao here and there, a little bit of chocolate here and there, but I haven't had any chocolate for like the last month just because I wanted to get my electrolyte levels checked. Let's see if you could even see it. So there you go. Fasting testosterone, 6.63. Fasting insulin, 7.64. And potassium in the normal range, and magnesium in the normal range as well. Not supplementing anything. Eating organs, eating fat, a bunch of egg yolks. Ate 2 brains this week. So, yeah, we got Nicole. Hey, Nicole was in the Keto Collective. What's up, Nicole? Nicole V. Glad you enjoyed it. Are you in this group? Are you in the current one? You were in last month's, weren't you? All the months run into one. But anyways, yeah, it's really interesting. Some people would think that salt is bad for you. I even see people in the low carb who talk about not consuming salt. After working with, probably thousands of people over the years, I've never seen anybody do well with low salt. Everybody ends up craving more sodium on a low carb diet. So, fear of protein, one of the biggest stumbling blocks for a lot of people. Fear of animal foods and thinking that you got to balance out the sinful animal foods with vegetables somehow. Or that for some reason thinking that olive oil or coconut oil are better than beef or lard, right? That, eating brain has a lot of cholesterol, or marrow, which I've been eating every day for like the last month leading up to my to my recent lab work, which we're going to talk about with not Dr. Dave Feldman, I'm sorry. Should be a doctor, though. With Dave Feldman, cholesterolcode.com. So I got my cholesterol results here. And we're going to talk about all of this today with Dave Feldman. Let's see. Find the... All right. All right, so I'm going to give Dave a call. What do you guys think about it? What do you guys think about talking to Dave Feldman today? I'll call him right now. Let's see what's up with Dave. We'll talk about cholesterol. We'll talk about labs. Mr. Dave Feldman.
How you doing?
You look like you just... Oh, wait, what's going on? Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you not hear me?
I can hear you. I think I'm getting an echo of something.
Oh, sorry. That's me.
Oh, nice. Nice. Dude, you look like you just butchered Barney. What's going on?
Oh,
you got purple light? You're doing like purple light therapy?
Oh, do I? Hold on a sec. Let me,
When I say like you look like you just got done, like you just murdered Barney.
let me see if I can switch it just a second.
Okay. It's just like the chroma scheme or something like that. There you go. It's getting better.
There we go.
You're coming back
All
to
right.
human.
Sweet.
Entering Earth's atmosphere. Dave Feldman. Cholesterol code.
How you doing?
Good, man. I'm so glad to talk to you. It's been a while. It's been like, what did we talk, like maybe 6-8 months ago we talked, right?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. It all kind of runs together for me now. There's so much stuff that's been happening so fast, particularly with the experiments. This most recent experiment I'm on, you're going to be very interested in. But it's not done yet, so I can't release too much.
Okay.
I'll just say this. I've been eating the exact same meals at exactly the same time at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., 8 p.m., also that I could maintain this just perfect, like still water, if you will, of my cholesterol coming up to intervention phases. And the intervention phases are intense exercise, particularly resistance training.
And you haven't started the resistance training yet.
Right. This is finally it. I've waited for freaking 2.5 years for this.
Are you going to track CRP with? I know it's kind of expensive, but are you going to track CRP too?
You have no idea. My tests have only been getting more expensive as my fantastic Patreons have been providing me a little more funding. I've only expanded on the total amount of data that I capture, and so let's just say that there's quite a lot of money that goes into each test, and it's because I'm tracking a huge number of different things, not just CBC, CRP, but also things like IGF-1 and free fatty acids and even glucagon, not just insulin.
Wait, you've been tracking glucagon? Who does glucagon tests?
Is this guy?
Wait, you got your own? You buy a machine where you could test your own glucagon?
No, you can get it from a lab. It's just crazy expensive.
Because I haven't seen any ability to test that here. I mean, I got my fasting insulin tested, which I sent you the results. We could talk about that in a bit. But like, can we give a little bit of background? I know you can wax poetic about cholesterol all day, and your wife probably gets jealous when you talk about cholesterol these days.
she already rolls her eyes at it at this point. But yeah, for those of your listeners who don't know, I'm definitely an obsessive biohacker. I do very intense experiments, and while they tend to center around cholesterol and the changing of cholesterol numbers and just the lipids in general, I actually track a lot of other things along with it. And because of that, there's a lot of information that's come out of a lot of my experiments that aren't even necessarily related to cholesterol. Actually, I'm glad you brought up salt, because I don't know if you knew this. I actually average close to, or at least attempt to average close to around 10 grams a day. And that's closer to my floor.
But do you mean like raw weight salt, 10 grams? That's only like that's less than 3 teaspoons, right?
Yeah, that's less than 3 teaspoons. But a teaspoon of salt is a lot to a lot of people.
I eat like 15 grams of salt a day.
So, and you probably know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Like at the beginning of this experiment, that was the only thing I had to change. Was I was getting around 5 grams of salt, roughly, with what I put on my meals. And then I further had a supplement of sports salts, which has additional like 444 milligrams, something along those lines. And that wasn't doing it. I was still getting leg cramps. And so I had to correct it by adding an additional teaspoon of salt with water each day. And that solved it. Then I didn't get, I got a Charlie horse at one point. Oh, and I have so many friends that are like, I can't even believe that would happen. You salt your food so much. And there's just some of us on keto just need a lot more salt.
Yeah, I think people underestimate that. That's one of the common things with coaching with our keto collective that I've noticed is, number one, undereating on protein, being afraid that protein is going to ruin the diet, which is, I don't know if I've ever met anybody who's overate protein on a ketogenic diet. I think people are more at risk of under-consuming it. Could be wrong there.
I think you can if you do it with powders. I think if people are shooting to have lots of protein, like getting it in a processed form, then you can go over. This is what I usually say, Tristan. I don't know if you'd say the same thing. I say, unless you're specifically trying to increase your protein, or you're specifically trying to decrease your protein, you probably land on about the right amount of protein.
Yeah.
It's only the people that are trying really hard to either limit it or to boost it intentionally that seem to have the biggest.
I find that protein leverage hypothesis is really interesting. I mean, that kind of ties in with where you're going there, right? It's like where we'll auto-regulate our food intake if we get sufficient protein. And the protein leverage hypothesis, you're familiar with that, right?
Yeah.
So basically holding that when you if you give people a buffet of various macronutrient profiles, once they reach a certain threshold of protein, they'll stop eating the carbs and the fat because they've gotten that protein
22% or something like that. Ted Naiman's got a great talk on this. And it's where, of course, the protein-sparing modified fast comes from. Is if you have a whole bunch of, lean meat, for example, it will naturally limit the amount of total quantity of food you'll eat.
Yeah, absolutely. And, everybody talking about, well, it's just calories. It's just calories in, calories out. But, to look at all calories if they're equal, to look at a Pop-Tart as the same as a steak is just ridiculous, in my opinion. So I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a fan of that let me specify. I definitely do believe that there's a lot to be said for energy balance. I believe, though,
Yeah.
that the mechanisms within the body that manage that, particularly on the hormonal level, are like, we're just at the beginning of kind of understanding that. Because the biggest problem is we can't actually easily test total energy disposal. For example, through, brown adipose tissue, or through through urination, or for that matter, just how much total absorption there is on a per meal basis. Even if you think that the composition of the meals are the same, there could be further internal regulation as to how much passes through the other side.
Yeah,
All of these things,
absolutely.
until we can really measure all of them perfectly, we can't even get down to the basics of SECO.
Well, yeah, it's so funny. Well, the whole thing, it becomes a straw man, really. I mean, it's like to say, a lot of the people who will thump the sicko thing, which is calories in, calories out, they will misrepresent what people who are advocating a ketogenic diet like yourself and myself would even say. It's like, of course calories matter. To say calories don't matter is ridiculous. But the foods we eat determine how many calories our body is going to desire to eat and how many calories it absorbs. And, hunger levels and maintaining low hunger and high satiety, that's definitely something that needs to be further explored. And but back to the lipid metabolism. Cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, HDL cholesterol, triglycerides. Can we briefly touch on kind of how you see these things in the body and what it is they're doing in the body? Because I know it's a slightly different approach that you take, Dave, and I think my audience could really, really connect. We've got some pretty clever people in the audience here, all the fellow meat-tards on in the chat. Pretty sophisticated audience, and we'd love to hear what you think cholesterol is and what the heck it's doing in there in our blood, floating around in my blood. Last time I tested, 451.9 milligrams per deciliter of cholesterol. Deadly cholesterol. And my poor carotid artery, it's being lazy. It's not catching all the cholesterol. I got it scanned a few months ago. It's
Give it
perfectly
time.
clean.
Give it time, Tristan.
Give it some time. And my CAC I never got, but Shawn Baker's apparently doesn't matter because it could be soft plaque now, so that doesn't matter. So I don't know what to think now, Dave.
Well, so first of all, of course, the biggest challenge I have in trying to explain cholesterol to people is that it's complicated, even though they want it to be simple. That's the hardest part. You want to think it's like any other marker that you can easily assign some very basic levels of fear or appreciation for, like how low your glucose is. Oh, that's great. If it's low, it's a good thing, period. I don't really need to know a lot more about that. But there can be good and bad reasons your LDL cholesterol can be high. However, the tip-off usually is low HDL cholesterol or high triglycerides. So let me kind of unpack it a little bit. I'm going to try to keep it intermediate level. Basically, you have to understand this much. Cholesterol is not just on its own floating through your bloodstream. It's actually contained in these boats, if you will, that your body actually makes. And these boats are known as lipoproteins, which is short for lipid-carrying protein. And the reason your body puts cholesterol in that boat is the same reason it puts a whole bunch of other things in the same boat. It puts the energy you get from fat in these boats as well. And those are in the form of triglycerides. So triglycerides are loaded onto these boats, and you're being powered by fat. You're being powered a lot more by triglycerides. And in fact, the body then therefore needs to traffic more of these boats in total. Now, this is where it gets confusing for a lot of people because they go, now, wait a sec, I'm on a ketogenic diet and my triglycerides went down. Why is that? It's because your use went up. So the boats are carrying around a lot more triglycerides. You're being powered a lot more by those triglycerides. But guess what? Those triglycerides are being taken by your cells very rapidly. And therefore, they're getting depleted per boat. Well, what happens if you have more total boats that are fueling you with triglycerides? Well, what's that other cargo I was just talking about? Cholesterol.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a whole bunch of other stuff in these boats. A lot of them they haven't fully figured out or elucidated. But triglycerides and cholesterol are the ones we want to talk about a lot. And then, of course, there's fat-soluble vitamins. You don't want to miss out on A, D, E, and K.
So
They're also carried
cholesterol
on
is
these same
transporting
boats.
fat-soluble vitamins as well.
More specifically, the lipoproteins that
Oh,
also
yeah.
carry cholesterol are also carrying fat-soluble vitamins.
Now, interesting.
So,
So we're looking at these lipoproteins, dogmatically almost as being bad, but we wouldn't be able to get vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin E, where they need to go without lipoproteins.
they're in my opinion, they're vital.
Yeah.
You absolutely need these lipoproteins to be traveling around in your vascular system because your tissues can get things like, say, vitamins, all the B vitamins and C, because they're all water soluble. Therefore, they can swim just fine into the bloodstream. But if it's not water soluble, which A, D, E, and K are, they're fat soluble. They don't swim well. It's like oil and water, right? They're lipids. Therefore, every kind of lipid your cells need gets put in this boat, and then that boat is sent out, and that way it can fuel you just fine. So, yes, let's talk about your numbers real quick, because without question, the vast majority of doctors around the world would say that you need to go on a cholesterol-lowering medication.
Absolutely.
Right?
Got to get them statin drugs.
And I would say that right now they would say the same thing to me. I've been taking, through this experiment, I've been taking my lipids at least twice a day, sometimes multiple times in a day. And my numbers aren't too far from yours. I think at my mean average, it was close to, I want to say 380 total cholesterol and maybe 310 LDL cholesterol.
Yeah, my LDL last measure was it 362?
Right.
Yeah.
So we're not actually far off from each other. Now, naturally, the next thing that happens after those people who are on the chat are freaking out, I'm sure, these are just, to help kind of give some context, if you have 190 LDL cholesterol or higher, many offices will assume that you just absolutely have familial hypercholesterolemia, that it could only be that high genetically, right?
Right.
But I've already demonstrated with my experiments that I can get my cholesterol way down again. In fact, even below what it was when I started the ketogenic diet. In fact, in 1 week, I brought my cholesterol from 207 to 103 in 7 days, right? So you follow my work. You're pretty familiar with the fact that I'm very confident this is a very dynamic system. So why am I not afraid for you or me as it stands right now?
Can I just interject and say that the way he dropped his cholesterol so dramatically, it's called the FELDMAN protocol, and you can find this on his website, cholesterolcode.com. He basically ate a shitload of fat for several days. It's like a 3-day loading period where you were eating so much fat, like really, really increasing your calories from fat. That's how he dropped his cholesterol levels. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that was actually the 3-day one. And that one I did with the first public presentation of my data. I actually wrapped the experiment around the presentation so that I was doing it in real time. So everybody at the conference was observing me having lots of fat. And so in that case, in those 3 days, I dropped my LDL-C by 73 milligrams per deciliter, 73 in 3 days. So that was really super crazy fast. What it comes down to is simply this. If I were to try to pick the most glaringly obvious factor that comes around to looking at cholesterol, it's that we're ignoring a better measurement for what seems to be very clearly a worse measurement. LDL cholesterol is kind of like a weight scale, like a bathroom scale, right? Let's say that you were a doctor and the only measurement you had for every patient you had was their weight. You couldn't see them physically. You couldn't take their blood, nothing. You just had that scale, right? Now, would I be correct in that there would be a loose correlation between that scale and somebody's health? Like, could you have a loose idea on whether somebody was unhealthy by that scale?
Yeah, that's really interesting because somebody might have more muscle mass. Somebody could
Sure,
be
exactly.
6'5". Like, Shawn Baker, he's a huge dude. I think he's 6'5" and something like 200 and I don't know, 260 or something. He's a big dude. Whereas, like, I could be 100 and, maybe I could be on the scale. I'm 180 pounds and I was overweight, right? Like, if I was 180 pounds, I'd be way overweight unless I just, was taking steroids and got real jacked or something. And then you look at Shawn Baker on the scale, you think, oh, well, this guy's obviously much less healthy. But I could be super fat and he could be super jacked.
Right. So, short answer is, I think you would have a loose correlation somebody who's weighing 500 pounds, that's probably not all muscle. So I could say, okay, that in that case, I could feel pretty confident that person was unhealthy. But if you were to look at everybody who is at 300 pounds or at 250 pounds and said that person needs to be on a diet, by knowing only the 250 pound weight, that obviously is problematic, right? Okay, so now let me introduce a different measurement. Let's say you had both their height and their waist, right?
Yeah.
You had the total, the length of their height and the circumference of their waist. Now, if you were a doctor and you had to choose between those two, a scale or their weight and height, or sorry, their waist and height, which would you go with?
Well, obviously, the extra variable is going to add a whole other dimension of analysis there. So you want more variable.
Right. But let's say you had to choose. Let's say you had to drop off one of those. You had to either go with the scale or you had to go with the combination of height and waist circumference.
I'll do the height-waist ratio for sure.
Like it's a no-brainer. It's a better measurement.
Right.
It's still not a perfect measurement, but it's clearly a better measurement of health because you would expect with higher waist circumference that you have more context, particularly against the height. And as it happens, as cheap tests go, it's very closely correlated with all-cause mortality that if your waist is half your height, you're in pretty good shape.
And insulin sensitivity as well, right? You can actually kind of estimate insulin sensitivity with that.
Correct. Very well. Okay, so now what is LDL? LDL is like the bathroom scale. I absolutely concede that if you only look at LDL, you'll have a loose correlation with cardiovascular disease because it'll probably pick up both the people who have high LDL for good reason and high LDL for a bad reason, right? But the high LDL for a bad reason, the tip-off, is low HDL and or high triglycerides, which is like the waist and the height.
Where would you look at? All right, so what is high triglyceride? So the lab that I get work done, they define over 150. And then low HDL, how do they define HDL? They say HDL should be over 55 for men.
Yes, that's pretty generous. I usually see them say it should be over 40 for men, and I disagree with that. I used to be a little more generous with triglycerides in that I likewise would think that under 150 was probably okay. I do think that people should try to target getting under 100 milligrams per deciliter.
So my triglycerides in the last several tests I've done, they're usually around 80. They hover around 80 to 85. Let's see, this last one, 86.6 were my triglycerides. And then my HDL was 72.1.
Which is excellent.
Yeah.
Absolutely excellent. I have a chart that I'm going to pull up. That's one of my favorite charts. And it really kind of illustrates very well if you can see, this is from a study, and you can see they divided it between those people who had an LDL of 170 or less, and those who had an LDL of 170 or more. And then they further stratified in each of those groupings by the HDL being above, I want to say 57, and the triglycerides being below like 97, 98, something like that.
Okay.
And you can see that they are in the absolute lowest risk factor. Whether or not they're above or below 170, it's almost identical. It's almost identical.
Interesting.
And likewise, it's almost identical on the top end. That the real risk factor is the HDL and the triglycerides. And I don't know if you knew this. If you're on Twitter, you probably know this. You happen to be talking to me on the anniversary, the month anniversary of when I decided to go ahead and offer a $300 reward for anybody who can bring me a study, any study that shows that people who have high triglycerides and people who have high HDL cholesterol and low triglycerides will have high cardiovascular disease with high LDL cholesterol. Like I'm offering $300, right?
Yeah.
If they
the cholesterol bounty. So I titled this "Dave Feldman puts a bounty on cholesterol," because I have been following this and I've seen a couple people link some studies that weren't convincing to me. Has anybody been successful at all with this?
No, and bear in mind, I'm not even asking for high rates of cardiovascular disease. I'm just asking above average.
Yeah.
Just be the above average that's right now posted at the American Heart Association's website as what the average level of coronary heart disease are for cardiovascular disease, either one.
Yeah.
Just above average for having super high levels of LDL, so long as you have low triglycerides and high HDL. And I have 2 studies that show the opposite. One of them I just showed you just now. I've yet to see a single study that shows it. And this is the scariest thing to me, Tristan, is I think it's possible that data is already living right now in some of these larger databases. Like it may be with the Pure data sample. It may be with MESA, right? The multi-ethnic atherosclerosis one.
What do you think about
so
the recent Pure, the epidemiological study? Because we had 1 week ago or 2 weeks ago, the whole plant-based crowd was harping on about this epidemiological study that showed that, what was it? It showed that, they were claiming that a high-fat diet is going to kill you. It's going to make you die younger. And if you eat more carbs, you're going to live longer. So you had like Harvard, I don't know, you had Time Magazine publish an article about it. There was all sorts of funny stuff coming out. And then we had the next week, the Pure study showing another epidemiological study showing that supposedly meat and dairy intake are associated with longer life. Right? So, I mean, what do you think about epidemiology? Because it's like, I didn't, I'm not going to go out there and share the Pure study and pretend like, shout it on the mountains. This epidemiology says what I believe to be true. But what do you think about all this stuff?
So to be sure, epidemiology, I don't classify quite as highly as I would randomized control trials. That said, overall, part of my problem is if you follow my work and you see just how intensely, like this very experiment that I'm on right now, I'm not only logging everything, I'm literally taking pictures of everything I ingest, which I actually do every day of my life since November 2015. I am obsessive about being sure all variables are controlled. And this is a problem I have with a lot of modern studies. I feel like there's not nearly as much of that as I would like. And so a lot of times when I look at the methodologies, I already kind of have a problem with the methodologies, but where I get very frustrated is that there'll oftentimes be further adjustments that they talk about in text but don't quantify. So when they say something like, and then we further applied the such and such model, and then there's no like further elucidation as to what that model was or how it's done.
Why they changed, why they used it to manipulate the data.
Yeah, like you've got to, can we check their work or not? And if the answer is no, then already I start from the position of feeling less confident in the data. But if on top of that, there's no reproduction by another team, which by the way, just never happens practically in cholesterol research, particularly with drug studies, is a large drug study will take place. It'll take millions, maybe even hundreds of millions. And then whatever that data is that lives, that's never going to get reproduced. And so it's just kind of assumed to be what we've got to go with, right? And then our ability to check the work of that, or for that matter, to have a different team reproduce it, is just not there. Well, needless to say, this is what started all of my research. This is what started my experimenting, is I said, you know what, I'm just going to go get my own data. Like, I know I can control myself really well, right? And so getting to...
And even that's hard,
earlier,
right? It's like even to control your own diet, the steps that Dave is taking, nutritional epidemiology isn't anywhere close to controlled. And, this is what you're looking at with what Dave is doing with these little studies he's doing on himself. And he's included some other people as well. He's got some other people to jump on board with his studies and break the bank with a lot of these lab tests. But he is so controlled.
I have to give a shout out to Siobhan Huggins. She started working for me a few months ago. She's taken it upon herself to also do a bunch of these experiments. And she has a great groundbreaking experiment herself that's coming out. Or I think that is out, and that we actually have a video on with Lp(a) if anybody's interested in that. But yeah, to reemphasize, when you ask a bunch of people a food frequency questionnaire, obviously I don't take that to the same degree, because I already know from my own work that when I would try to estimate food and then measure it after the fact, that I was off on my estimates all the time.
Yeah, man. I'm the same way. If I'll think I'm eating maybe, I'm probably eating like 180 grams of fat. And then I'll look, I was like, oh no, that was definitely 300 grams of fat today. Right. So it's like, dude, for me to try to do the FELDMAN protocol, I've almost done it a few times, but I just can't. Like I've been eating at a relative surplus, like I think it's a surplus, and gaining very slowly for the last few months. But it's just, I mean, on a high fat diet, it's so hard for me to overeat really. And
Yeah,
yeah, so
that's
I
not
don't know,
just you;
man.
that's
Like
everybody.
to get at a huge surplus on a ketogenic carnivorous style diet like I do, it's just, I don't know. Like the digestive issues will come first, and then it's just like, oh man, I can't digest all this. I'm done.
There's so many times people will say, "I'm so excited, Dave. I'm about to do your protocol," because in
Yeah.
their mind they're thinking, "This is great. I can just pig out on all the fatty foods I want." And it's not like carbs. When I've had carb-based experiments, like this recent Standard American Diet experiment, that was an experience. Sure enough, being able to, like, say, eat a medium-sized pizza, you could ramp up to it pretty quickly. Uh, Not a problem. A foot-long Subway sandwich, not a problem. It actually didn't take long for me to get used to doing that. Refined carbs can go down pretty quickly, but trying to eat 5,000 calories of ketogenic diet is just absolutely brutal.
So hard.
And so people who've already done the keto or who've already done the protocol because they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do it again, but I'm going to be so tired of food. And that's somebody who's done it.
Yeah, it's so hard. I mean, with the way I eat, it's funny because I do eat the most cholesterol, like the highest cholesterol foods that you could find in nature. I eat liver several times a week.
That's so good for you.
I love liver, and I'll eat it. Like
It's so good for
I'm a
you.
weirdo lately. I eat more raw meat now too. So it's like, for me, like if I eat meat raw, like I'll do a lot of bone marrow raw, brain. So I mean, I don't how many milligrams of cholesterol I've consumed in the last month. It's just staggering, right? Like I'm doing egg yolks because I prefer to I like steaks. So I'll have some egg yolks. I'll have a bunch of marrow, maybe some brain, and then I'll have a steak that's cooked. And sometimes I'll eat a little bit of raw meat too. So I mean, it's just these foods, they're so filling and they're so satiating, but there's so much freaking cholesterol in it. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So do you think that the amount of cholesterol that you're consuming is something to be alarmed at with what you've been seeing?
It has very little to do with what actually ends up in your bloodstream. The reason there's a correlation between having higher detection of blood cholesterol and the cholesterol you're eating is because usually the cholesterol you're eating is coming along with fat. Mm-hmm. If you're trafficking more fat, then your body is trafficking more cholesterol. But when I say trafficking, I'm being very careful with my wording here. By trafficking, that same cholesterol that's showing up in your blood may not be on its first lap around your vascular system. It may have actually it could be on its third or fifth lap. Those boats that are carrying it around, they eventually get back to the liver. The liver absorbs it, and the liver may make use of that cholesterol in many different ways. It may turn it into a hormone, it may turn it into bile acid, but it also may package it again onto another boat with a brand new payload of fatty acids that goes back out again. The fatty acids get used, the cholesterol comes back again to the liver. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So what about oxidized cholesterol? So a lot of people talk about, well, oxidation, it's the oxidized cholesterol that is bad. So what is happening there? How does cholesterol become oxidized?
Well, in a sense, what they're usually talking about is one of two categories. If it's in the bloodstream, they usually don't mean oxidized cholesterol. They mean oxidized lipoproteins. Mm-hmm. And by that, they usually mean the shell, the hull, if you will, of the ship. The phospholipids, they can get oxidized. But actually, one of your fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin E, also known as, there's actually several flavors of it, but the most prominent flavor is alpha-tocopherol. That actually is an antioxidant. And the antioxidant means actually literally that as it comes into contact with a free radical, it will donate its hydrogen atom and turn it into a non-radical product. So let me kind of restate that in a different way. The more LDL particles you have in your bloodstream that have alpha-tocopherol, the more overall oxidative defense you have, because these are antioxidants that are available for exposure to these free radicals, right? So with that in mind, there's this one other kind of way in which you do have oxidized cholesterol, and that's actually the oxidized cholesterol that can be found within the arterial wall. So actually part of a plaque is you're actually having, to kind of simplify it for your listeners, There's good cholesterol that's found in those plaques, and then there's Siobhan will correct me on exactly what the name of it is, but it's basically cholesterol that can't get reused. And what's going to happen is HDL, the so-called good lipoproteins, will go and they actually pull the cholesterol out of the plaques and ultimately take it back to the liver for the liver to once again determine if it's going to dispose of it through the bile or if it's going to reuse it.
What do you think is actually causing these plaques?
What's causing the plaques? So that's a subject of enormous debate. Naturally, the conventional medicine will say what's causing it is overall exposure to high levels of LDL particles.
So cholesterol in the blood, just it doesn't know what to do. It gets in the heart. It's just like, I'm going to hang out here. These other things are hanging out here. Let's all just die together in the artery wall. That's kind of the conventional wisdom, which to me it seems completely crazy considering that cholesterol is like ubiquitous throughout the entire body. Every single one of our cell membranes is made of lipid.
Yep.
So it's like, I mean, how much cholesterol is flowing through the body? I've heard you quantify it before, but what's one way of?
You want the mind-blowing version?
Yeah, man, give me the mind-blowing.
So again, lipoproteins are the boats that carry them, right? So how many low-density lipoproteins are in your body right now? Well, you know how big a grain of sand is, right? A little tiny grain of sand. You ever grab like a handful? That's around 400,000 grains of sand.
Wow.
Just like getting a handful.
Okay.
So would you be surprised to find out that you have as many lipoproteins as there are on a beach?
In your body.
In your body.
So have you ever picked up all the sand on an entire beach in your hands? That's like how much you would have to pick up to represent the amount of particles of LDL in your body.
Would that surprise you?
Wow.
What if I told you it was the beach surrounding all of Australia?
And this stuff is supposedly bad, but that's the quantity that's cruising around in our body.
Yeah. Actually, I'm still lowballing. I'm having fun.
That's not even all of it? What? All the beaches in Australia? There's a lot of beaches there.
No.
What about
Yeah,
Africa?
not
all the beaches of Africa.
How about right now in your body, you have about as many LDL particles as half of the world's, every single grain of sand on every beach in every desert around half of the world. So by the end of next week, you will have cycled through as many LDL particles as there are grains of sand in the entire world.
What?
Yeah. So when you see me do my protocol and I'm moving those numbers up and down, recognize this. This isn't a little tube going, bigger and smaller. Each of those are getting endocytosed by receptors in either non-hepatic tissues or in the liver. That's how tightly controlled it is. We can't even quantify that. It's measured in quintillions. A quintillion is a million trillions. A million trillions.
It sounds like when I'm like 5 years old and you're like, yeah, I'll beat you up quintillion, million, trillion times. Just up in the ante. Man.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
We can't even come close to quantifying that.
So obviously nature must have made a mistake because LDL is so bad. Why would stupid nature put it everywhere in our bodies and in our brains and in our hearts? Why does the body need so much of these naughty things floating around?
Well, and I have an answer for it that is not widely accepted. Uh-oh. It's talked about. It's actually in the physiology, but it's not closely studied. And it's because I believe that the body is very keen to make sure that's available for use by tissues that need it. Now, what happened is they discovered that cells can make their own cholesterol. And then from that, they said, oh, well, if they can make their own cholesterol, it doesn't need to be brought to them in these LDL particles. So there's no reason at all. I hear this and read this all the time in literature. There's no reason whatsoever for LDL particles to carry cholesterol. That cargo shouldn't be on board the ship.
I think nature made a mistake. The body doesn't know what it's doing. We need a biologist to fix this, Dave. That's so crazy. What kind of, like as an engineer, that must be such a funny thing because you look at systems, right? You're not looking at like, oh, well, there's, why there's no need for gasoline to be in this gas line. There's no need for this. We don't want. I mean, that's insane.
It's actually quite frustrating because at a minimum, I feel like that you should be doing the experiments that I'm trying to do myself.
Yeah.
This current one part of the reason I was trying to set up this experiment is my hypothesis was, and I posted it before I started doing the interventions of this experiment. My hypothesis was if I kept all other things equal and I did intensive exercise, enough to make my body very sore, particularly upper body, that I'd see a drop in my LDL cholesterol. Why would I see a drop? Because I believe there would be more of my existing muscle tissue endocytosing, as in engulfing the LDL particles. And that would therefore bring it down in total quantity in my bloodstream.
Yeah.
Now, that's not a good or bad thing so much as it's an obvious mechanistic thing as to the reason why my body would have those available in the first place. So beyond those advantages you get with, for example, the antioxidant defense and the other immunological capabilities, you also have things such as the reparative aspects. And the reparative aspects, especially for tissue, I think are very important. And I think it's the reason people who are going on a ketogenic diet often see very fast recovery times relative to when they were on a carb-centric diet. Is a lot of this comes back down to just raw material made available to your cells in the form of lipoproteins.
And even old injuries, I've noticed like accelerated healing on old injuries that I was having a lot of problems getting healed with, more of an enlightened plant-based diet. It wasn't working. And as soon as I went on a higher fat diet and started getting a lot of cholesterol-rich foods, a lot of these fat-soluble vitamins in, I noticed huge difference in in just old injuries breaking up. And yeah, man, that's a fascinating take. So cholesterol is crucial for the repair and rebuilding of tissue.
No question. I mean, and again, this is that the statement as you made it right now is recognized in the literature. It's just that they would immediately jump in and say, but it's okay because cells can make their own. Yeah, it's sort of, to me, it's kind of like imagine if you had a Home Depot truck passing your house every 5 minutes. And so if you had some wall repair you needed to do, but you had it in the garage, it's fine. You might use what's in the garage. But let's say, a portion of your house fell off. Well, then you're happy that the Home Depot truck keeps driving by and he keeps reaching out and going, hey, did you need anything? Help fix up your house? Maybe you have the ability to recycle or rework with the materials inside your house. But why? Why, if you have the ability to make use of that Home Depot truck that's driving by?
Interesting. So this is why you might see if somebody's got an injury or an infection, you might see a jump in cholesterol levels as well, right?
Well, here's part of the problem. Part of the problem is we don't. The reason I'm doing the experiment the way that I'm doing it right now is I'm trying to capture uptake in a controlled manner. So we can't say for sure exactly how much the increase of synthesis is until we can know on the other end how much the increase or decrease of uptake is. So it is already known in the case of things like, say, an injury or an infection, that the body actually signals to ramp up higher production of these ApoB-containing lipoproteins. But we need to also look at the other side of the ledger. Now, what's the total uptake? How much is it actually getting used, right?
So if the body's upregulating the production of the lipoproteins, would increasing the consumption of cholesterol as building blocks possibly be an aid in recovery for some people? I mean, could that mechanistically, would you want to be consuming during an injury or during a repair period? Would cholesterol-rich foods perhaps be beneficial to the body at that point, just considering the system's dynamic?
I would again qualify. It doesn't matter if it's cholesterol rich. It's more if it's fat based. And obviously, there's a whole interesting area of how much absorption you actually have, because the key thing to remember is most cholesterol is in the form of cholesterol esters, and cholesterol esters have these long side chains that keep them from getting absorbed by your gut, by the enterocytes in your gut. So most of the cholesterol you absorb is actually the free cholesterol that's found in your food. And that's actually a tiny amount of the total payload. So if you have a ton of cholesterol, if you're just eating lots and lots of cholesterol, you actually only get a fraction of it out of your diet.
So when I eat a raw brain, like if I have a whole brain, because I know like it's mostly cholesterol. I don't know how many grams of cholesterol would be in that whole raw brain.
I think it's a fifth of the weight is cholesterol, if I'm not mistaken.
I wonder the PUFA content as well, right? Because, the human brain's got a lot of DHA. I'm not sure what, like a beef brain, I'm not sure what the lipid profile of that even is.
I know, charting some new territory for me.
It's a
I don't know.
tangent, I know, but I'm obsessed with eating brain right now. It's just, I don't know. Have you ever eaten
I hear
brain?
it's really good for you.
It's really good.
I haven't.
It tastes so good.
But I'd be willing to bet if you ate a lot of brain, even if you had a greater amount of absorption, this is in the literature, there ends up being a counterbalance in synthesis. So your liver is making, I forget exactly how much, I want to say like 1 gram or 2 grams of cholesterol a day on just a typical diet. And let's say that you're a hyper absorber, you're actually absorbing a lot more from your diet. You do happen to get a lot more free cholesterol. It'll bring down the total amount it synthesizes. So it has its own homeostasis to it. At any given time, about 80 to 85% of the cholesterol that's in your bloodstream right at this moment in time, your body made. Yeah. It didn't come from your diet. And that's crucial for a lot of people to understand this whole research, this whole loop.
So, all right. The function of cholesterol in the body, we can't do without it, right?
No question. We can't
What
do
about,
without.
All right, so something that's always interested me is the associations between cholesterol and heart attack. When you actually start to look at some of this research, it doesn't really seem to pan out as we've been told. Like I've seen, I don't have any studies pulled up right now, and I'm not an expert on this by any means. I am just an explorer, right? But what I've seen is a lot of evidence showing that low cholesterol versus high cholesterol, when you look at actual heart attack patients, like there was a study out of UCLA Medical Center, I think it was, that there are slightly more people with low cholesterol going there with heart attacks. So if that pans out to be true, that like high cholesterol doesn't even mean you're going to get more heart attacks, then you look at associations between higher cholesterol and all-cause mortality not even all-cause mortality, but mortality from cardiovascular events. And people with high cholesterol survive much more. And then if you look at like elderly population, centenarians all have high cholesterol. So it interests me, all these associations that seem to get kind of swept under the rug when we're just told, the diet heart hypothesis stuff about cholesterol is going to go up and you're going to get a heart attack and you're going to die because rabbits. But, you see where I'm going here? Like, what are we really looking at? Like, why is there such a divide between what people believe cholesterol is doing in the body, the association between heart attack, and why is it that there seems to be this component of longevity associated with higher cholesterol?
Well, it gets back to the bathroom scale problem, right? If you say, look, we just want to look at this one measurement, we just want to look at LDL. You can extract some amount of mortality data from that, particularly with cardiovascular disease. What you're talking about is something I saw very early in my research. Is I said, well, I don't want to focus just on not dying of a particular thing, because that only means that I'm dying more of something that's not that thing. Yeah. Right? It doesn't tell me when I died. For that you need my favorite metric that everybody who follows me knows: all-cause mortality, dying of anything. Right? Yeah. That's what I want to know. And when I was looking at cholesterol against all-cause mortality, the first thing that popped out was it seemed like the evidence was very compelling that as far as for females, there's very large studies. This study out of Japan with I think it was total cholesterol, the one out of Norway recently. The Japan one was like 90,000 people. The one from Norway was, I think it was like 40 or 50,000, something like that. And if you look at just females, it's stepwise. It's like an X. It's like on one end, the higher your higher your total cholesterol, the lower your all-cause mortality at each quintile.
Isn't that weird?
If you're female.
This is the complete opposite of what we've been told. And I don't know. To me, it just seems so backwards that we're treating this one lab. But
here's what they do. They go, oh, we weren't looking at all-cause mortality. We were looking at cardiovascular disease mortality, in which case they're right. Cardiovascular disease mortality for these women would go up stepwise, right? But let me put this in a different kind of phrase. Yeah. Would you take a pill that would guarantee you would live to 150, but you would die of a heart attack at age 150? Would you take that pill?
No. Well, personally, no. I wouldn't. If anybody tells me you're going to live forever, like, I take this pill, I'm like, you're snake oil sales. The original snake oil salesman.
Well, the point I'm coming to is if you took that pill because you were like, yes, I'd like to live to 150, even though I know I'll die of a heart attack at the end of it, that pill increased your chances of dying of a heart attack by 100%. You see my point?
Yeah.
So if you help to induce cancer at 60, preventing you from dying of a heart attack at 80, you could correctly say that thing you did that induced the cancer reduced your chance of dying of a heart attack. That's why it's silly to have this discussion at all unless you're talking about all-cause mortality. My favorite example is I like to call it the Cyanide Diet, because everybody who goes on my Cyanide Diet, I should make a book for it. Everybody who goes on it, they reduce their chance of dying of cardiovascular disease by 99%. They
Only
reduce
99?
their chance of dying of Alzheimer's disease by 99%. Well, some people I know are not going to be adherent to it, so I figure there's probably that 1% outlier, right?
That's
you
going
get
to
my
be
point.
the best. That's going to you're going to be the biggest plant-based cardiologist in the world with that book, the Cyanide Diet for heart health. Man.
But it's so true. If you die of something else earlier, then you've successfully reduced your chance of dying of the things other than that later. So therefore, it's crazy to me. It's crazy to look at any studies that don't include all-cause mortality if they make a claim of a mortality benefit, especially if it's cardiovascular disease. So this is why, for me, I wanted to just go get my data. People want to talk about the CAC. I've had 2 CACs, right? Not only that, my first CAC was more of a standard one. My second one, I actually flew to New York and got a 640 slice CT heart scan, arguably the most advanced non-invasive heart scan in the world. And
I thought everyone talks about the
CIMT
CIMT now, right? The people who are saying, "Oh, it doesn't matter, Shawn Baker's arteries, he's still going to die." You get the CIMT. Where can you get a CIMT?
I've got 5 CIMTs.
Okay, there we go.
And while I was writing, you know what? Actually, that's a great chart. You want to see that chart?
Yes.
Because this most recent experiment, before I show you this chart, I need to set it up a little bit.
Go for it.
This most recent experiment I did was a few months ago, and for 4 weeks, I went back to a standard American diet. I went back to a standard American diet in order to try to gain around 20 to 25 pounds of fat.
Your wife was stoked.
Yeah, actually, that was a fun discussion with my wife. There's that story will be in the book because that was very entertaining. But I said, look, honey, this will really help my lipid research a lot, and it happens to be over our 10-year anniversary, so we'll have a couple weeks where I could eat whatever you're eating, right? As long as I track it all. Sure enough, it did work. I did, although I didn't get to 20 pounds, I gained 19. But I need to set this up.
That would hurt. I'm just thinking, damn, did you feel bloated?
It wasn't a great time. But here's the thing. I was able to gather a lot of data that we've not been able to have, where I gained wide spectrum data, both on coming up to it and also in switching back to keto, getting at all the different benchmarks. So there's a lot of great stuff. That'll get released later. I won't get into that right now. But I need to set that up before I show you this chart.
Yeah.
If you look at the bottom part of this, you can see that
move it over to here. Let me pull this bigger.
Like that.
All right, there we go.
So you can see my CIMT
scoot it over a little bit
numbers.
to your left. The other direction, Dave. A little bit more. There we go. So yeah, the date, July 16th and the July 17th.
It's going to be cut off a little bit on the other side, but the point is you need to be able to see that the CIMT numbers that I had
going down
went down. They precipitously went down while I was at very high levels of LDL and LDLP.
So
in the 90th
super
percentile.
high cholesterol. They would have given
Super
you a
high
statin,
cholesterol.
and you're dropping down on that CIMT score dramatically.
Exactly. Every 6 months, I'm getting this. Every 6 months, right? Roughly.
Wow.
Now, here's the punchline. I go on a standard American diet. I gain the weight. And my LDL-C returns to what it was before I started keto. My last LDL-C before I started keto was 131, which is just a little high, but definitely a lot better by conventional
Healthier,
standards.
according to just looking at a piece of paper and making all these dumb assumptions that we just talked about.
Absolutely. So now I'm going to add one more row. Are you ready for this extra row?
Yeah.
It's highlighted in red.
4 weeks standard American diet, 680. Oh my goodness. That's just 4 weeks and it jumped up to 694. You were inflamed as shit. Oh my goodness. Yeah, your
Yeah.
wife must have been very happy when she saw that. What the hell are you doing, Dave?
Well, for certain, when I started this, I genuinely didn't think it would change that fast.
Yeah.
That I definitely said that I thought there was a decent chance it would move north. These ended up being higher on both, and this is why it's so so much powerful data, Tristan. This is on both sides. This isn't just one data point.
Yeah.
These are 2 data points, each carotid artery, right? So here I suddenly jumped from, I had regressed from an 80% risk value over 2 years of keto down while holding at super high levels of LDL cholesterol. I go standard American for 4 weeks, get my next 6 month, and boom, goes up to from the 20th percent risk marker back up to 80, and on one side, I think 85.
Wow.
So what do you suppose that I'm doing right now? Do you suppose I'm on a standard American diet with that low LDL-C, or do you suppose I'm on a ketogenic diet?
Well, it depends on what crazy experiment you're doing right now. Knowing you, it could be either way. It seems like the data drives your decisions on the diet lately.
It does, but I will concede this. I have no interest in repeating the standard American diet again anytime in the near future.
I wonder what it would have been like if you just did what you're doing now, a ketogenic diet. I wish I had the desire to waste so much money on labs, because I would do so many of these tests too. But I love that you're out there, and I love you for it, Dave, because you do the things that I just don't want to do.
Well, and I say this all the time, and I really mean it. Well, it's kind of half joking, half not. A lot of these I do so other people don't have to. A lot of these I do so you can know there was at least one person who was so intensely tenacious about trying to control for everything to make this happen, so that we could have something very hopefully profound to look at the end of the day.
So I wonder what would have happened if you would have done like a keto diet and then added in, so like me, if I'm going to eat carbs, I usually will just add like wild honey, right? Like raw honey, which is relatively low glycemic. It's got enzymes that actually help its digestion. I wonder what would happen on like a whole foods based non-standard American diet where it wasn't such an inflammatory, not a lot of bread, not a lot of the grains and stuff. I'm not even asking for your theory if you want to theorize on that, it's cool. But I just wonder.
I can theorize on it. Glycemic level matters, but I have a good way of putting it, which is, for me, and you probably won't hear hardly anybody else put it this way, but this is how I describe it. For me, from an engineering perspective, it's how fast does energy get in your bloodstream? Full stop. Because if energy can get into your bloodstream very quickly, much faster than we've had ancestral background dealing with. So what did we have a lot of practice with throughout almost all of our existence? We had a lot of practice with fat, protein, and fibrous carbs, right? So there really wasn't a lot of quick absorption of the foods we were eating. And oftentimes we'd have prolonged periods of fasting anyway, right? So I think the likelihood that your prehistoric man is actually in a spot where his insulin is above 10 milli-IU is like next to non-existent, right?
Yeah.
Definitely like above, like say 15 or something along those lines. So if you're having processed food, a lot of times that processed food has quick entry, like refined carbohydrates, right? And if you can get in there a lot faster than your leptin can detect in its typical standard speed, and bypassing your GI tract to what's normally giving it a lot more time to have that hormonal homeostasis, then it makes a lot of sense to me that you would have issues with lipid handling, with glucose handling, with your hormones in general. It's a whole different configuration. Yeah. And if you think about it, we really just started to do that. It's been a blink of an eye in our history that in just the last, 40, 50 years, we've really ramped up refined carbohydrates especially. So yeah, to answer your question, I doubt the honey matters that much, because odds are you're not dumping it in. You don't have it like a soda next to you where you have, 100 grams of sugar, right? To drink with your meal.
Absolutely. So That data is pretty staggering, man. So I mean, you're dropping your cholesterol, and you're seeing CIMT results showing more, blockage in your arteries there. And I mean, what did that freak you out when you saw it? Did you stop the experiment then, or did you keep going?
Well, I didn't even have the data in hand because he doesn't give it to me right away until like 30 days later.
Yeah.
Sometimes he'll let me see it right away. Sometimes he doesn't. So it wasn't until a bit later. And so after I had acquired it, I actually felt even better because think about it, coming up to the standard American diet, I had already had this track record of the other 4 data points.
Right.
If that was the first CIMT I had ever had, I don't even know what state of mind I would be in right now because I wouldn't know what to think, right?
Yeah.
This, by the way, is a problem with people getting a CAC. If you're getting your very first CAC and you're a few years into your diet, whether it be a ketogenic or not, you've got kind of a problem because you can't interpret it in the context of your prior lifestyle. So if your CAC is not 0 and you've been keto for like 3 years, but you're 33 years old, that could mean like 3 decades of calcification that was going on that you don't know how much of that applies versus the last 3 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry,
this is the
I've got
value.
so much. It's raining so hard right now. We got like a freaking typhoon. My wife's closing the door. Yeah, that's why I was yelling at you. Yeah. All right. Sorry if the audio gets too bad. We're having like the first rain of the year, and we've got potential leaks in our roof that may have to be dealt with, and this transmission might have to end soon. But man, I'm so appreciative of the work that you're doing. Definitely one of my favorite people to follow as far as experimentation on a high-fat diet, thinking outside the box, and looking at things as systems, which I think is so important, right? Like, I mean, most doctors, you get this, you get your piece of paper, and somebody gets that test one time a year, and you can skew some of these results pretty dramatically, which I want to tell you about something, Dave. I think you would find this really interesting. So, I sent you my blood work from the 12th of September. Now, that day, the 12th of September, I got my lipids. I got my fasting insulin, which was 7.64. So, how does that look, by the way? The 7.64 on the fasting insulin with fasting blood glucose of 67. What would you say, like, insulin sensitivity?
So it did surprise me a little bit. Usually lean mass hyperresponders will be under 5.
Yeah, that's what I was interested in that too. I thought 7 sounded high for me, but
I would start by asking, what is your workout routine? Did you work out before this blood draw?
I mean, it was like some light calisthenics. I did some pretty light workouts the 2 days before this. Nothing crazy. Nothing crazy, but I did work out like 3 days in a row, probably 30 minutes of resistance training each day.
And what was your diet before you adopted? So you were, I think paleo a little bit before keto?
Yeah, so I did like a paleo diet, and then before that I was on a vegan diet, and I grew up on just standard trash diet, and I always had major blood sugar dysregulation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's quite possible that you do have some outstanding insulin resistance that you're coming back from.
Yeah.
And it's what would explain you have unusually low fasting glucose for your lipid profile. Like your lipid profile is skirting right up next to a lean mass hyperresponder.
Uh-huh.
And the commonalities of those people who are lean mass hyperresponders is, of course, we were just mentioning it before, LDL cholesterol tends to be above 200. HDL tends to be above 80, and triglycerides tend to be below 70.
Okay.
Well, a few other commonalities they have is they'll tend to have higher fasting blood glucose compared to their sedentary low-carb counterparts.
Uh-huh.
So typically very athletic low carbers will get closer to, like, say, the 90s or even low 100s if they're a lean mass hyperresponder.
Yeah.
But their insulin will be like at the floor. It'll be like at 2 or 3 milli-IU, right? But people who are more on the sedentary side, they may end up having lower fasting glucose, like in the 70s or the 80s,
Yeah.
but their insulin will be a little bit higher, like say 5 to 8,
Yeah.
right? But their lipid profile tends to not look as much like a lean mass hyperresponder. So here's my prediction,
Yeah.
which I'll go ahead and immortalize on air right now. I believe your insulin will go down
Yeah.
over time. It may take a year or two. And I believe that your fasting glucose will go up.
Interesting.
That'll actually possibly even get up to the 90s at a certain point. Because I think you'll eventually, if you end up maintaining this way of life,
Yeah.
that you probably will end up being closer to the profile of a lean mass hyperresponder. That's
Now,
what
what
I
do you
predict.
what do you think about this? So I did saunas 3 days in a row, like intense sauna, total, like really intense sauna 3 days in a row before this blood draw. So, have you ever
That's
seen any data
interesting.
on dehydration affecting these levels? Because I will tell you that you can give somebody fake pre-diabetic level hemoglobin A1C by dehydrating them before a lipid panel, because I got my hemoglobin A1C that same day, and it said, all right, so my hemoglobin A1C usually 5.1 to 5.3. It was 4.5 one time, but that I think might have been like a lower error. I think usually 5 to 5.3. So, let's see. There it is. I got my hemoglobin A1C same day. Was very dehydrated, so 3 days of sauna in a row. Hemoglobin A1C had jumped up to 5.9. So I was like, that has got to be a lab error. And then I remembered that I'd done the sauna. Also, my C-reactive protein, usually 0.2 milligrams per deciliter, or no, usually about 0.1 milligram per deciliter, was 0.2 milligram per deciliter. So I was like, that's kind of weird. I'm going to go get it again the next day after properly hydrating and rehydrating myself. Went back the next day, hemoglobin A1C, 5.1. So,
Wow, that is some impressive data.
So, I mean,
I
just from
love that.
dehydrating myself, I jumped my hemoglobin A1C up to 5.9, and then the next day back down to my normal 5.1. And to me, this makes
gonna
it
be
kind of
very
alarming
tempted
for
to test
people who
that.
are like, I mean, you know, if that was my first time going to a doctor, I'm overweight, a doc might have said, dude, you're pre-diabetic or almost pre-diabetic. It's not like, 5.9 is not that bad, but for me, it was like really strange because always 5.1, 5.3. The next day, 5.1 again. So I wish I'd got my insulin again, because I'm starting to think that maybe my insulin, because of like my massive dehydration, and I was down about 6 pounds in weight in between these two blood works as well. Lipid panel didn't change at all. So lipid panel was basically the same both days. And then my CRP went back down to 0.13, whereas usually it's about 0.1 milligram per deciliter. So, yeah, funny stuff. I'm going to get my fasting insulin again this week just for you, though, Dave. $25.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Look, here's the deal. Like, you by no means have a high fasting insulin. You only just have a high fasting insulin relative to a lean mass hyperresponder.
Relative
So,
to where I
all
think I should be, too. Like, just, I don't know, because I've been doing low
yeah,
carb
for
for so
having
long.
next to no carbs.
Yeah.
Right. But that said, and let me just confirm one more thing. You also were 12 to 14 hours water fasted.
Yeah,
of course,
14 to 15 hours water fasted.
No coffee or
Nothing.
caffeinated beverages, anything like
No,
that.
I don't.
Perfect.
I do not partake in coffee these days.
And to all your listeners, this is like I have to shake my fist at this. They tell people they've changed the guidelines to where they're like, no, you don't have to be fasted for a cholesterol test.
Yeah, because they want your cholesterol higher, give you them statins.
Well, the problem is your triglycerides will go through the roof because you quite literally installed them into your bloodstream from the fatty meal you just had. So I strongly recommend being water only fasted for 12 to 14 hours before a blood test, especially if it's got a cholesterol.
How crazy is this? 5.9 down to 5.1 in one day, and they say hemoglobin A1C
amazing.
takes 3 months to skew. That you're looking at like a several month. I wonder if one were to overhydrate and intake a lot of salt and volumize blood, if you could artificially deflate these numbers rather than inflate the numbers. Because I thought that was really interesting. I mean, I don't think it was a lab error because I was able to double the CRP through the dehydration as well. So I think this is fascinating, and how many people out there are under eating salt, like we talked about earlier, right? Like getting the Charlie horses and stuff, and inability to sleep, heart palpitations when they start a keto diet, and they don't realize that the salt can be important for a lot of people. Could we talk about the remnant cholesterol?
Yes.
Talk about them
Love
remnants.
talking about the remnant cholesterol.
What the heck is the remnant
So-
cholesterol?
And Dr. Berg, by the way, hit that recently in a video.
Shout out to Dr. Berg.
But yeah, look, we were talking about the boats. We're talking about how they deliver triglycerides, right? Like that's like virtually every boat that's leaving the dock. And I guess though I'd probably get some pushback on some lipidologists for some recent stuff that's come up. But for the vast majority of boats that are leaving either your gut as chylomicrons or they're leaving your liver as VLDLs, before they get remodeled to LDL, they're dropping off energy, right? Now the question is, what would it mean if they were failing to drop off energy? What would that mean, right? So if you see that there are a lot of these boats that never remodel to LDLs, the VLDLs that come from your liver, if they've got like all their cargo, their triglyceride cargo, and knowing that they're supposed to drop that off in about a half an hour to an hour after they leave your liver, what does that mean if they're not achieving that? Well, it means one of two things in large categorical sense. One is that you probably maxed out your personal fat threshold, as in you're already packing up those adipose sites and you're already at a place where there's not a lot of parking for those triglycerides. Usually you're in a hyperinsulinemic state on top of that. You have a huge amount of insulin in your body. Well, there's another reason. The other reason is that you have some kind of challenge event, like an illness. Hopefully it's not a chronic one, but there are reasons, for example, if you, they have experiments where they inject people with lipopolysaccharides, which induce an immune response. And part of the immunity response is the body quickly starts generating a lot more of these VLDLs. And so it's actually in the process of fighting. So in either of these cases, what do we have in common? We have unremodeled VLDLs, or at least they're not remodeling fast enough. And we have a lot of their cargo, the triglycerides, right? So these are remnants. If you look right now at your blood test and you take your total cholesterol and you subtract your LDL cholesterol, because that's the final remodeled boat, and you subtract your HDL cholesterol, you'll have this remaining number, or at least you should. And that remaining number, you want to be very low because that's supposed to be a temporary boat. That boat is supposed to not hardly be there at all, right? That's the cargo on that boat of what is known as a remnant lipoprotein. And that cholesterol we call remnant cholesterol. And so now what they'll say in the literature is they'll say remnant lipoproteins are very atherogenic because they're associated with high levels of atherosclerosis. They'll say that in the literature. I have a different, no, I think but I don't think that. I think it's a system. I think it's a system breakdown. There's a problem with the system, not with the lipoprotein. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I don't think any lipoprotein is inherently atherogenic. I think broken systems are atherogenic. And right, yeah, that's what I would expect.
Dang it, nobody could hear me. I had my mic turned down on OBS.
I heard you.
Yeah, but I don't have it turned down on Skype. I don't know how
gotcha.
far back. All right, so my remnant cholesterol, for you guys who didn't hear, sorry for the sound. My remnant cholesterol always 17, about 16 to 17, and that's in the so-called medium low risk quartile. Now, when they're calculating risk, how are they calculating this with these calculators?
So let's go ahead and just put up front that this is still relatively new and that there's not a lot of data that really isolates it down. There already was a lot that kind of focused on VLDLs in particular. Remnants kind of encompasses a slightly larger field that includes IDL, intermediate density lipoproteins, and chylomicron remnants. But taking a step back, my answer is it's kind of a rough guesstimate based on a few particular studies. And part of the problem is a lot of these studies don't use fasting lipids. And I kind of shy away from that. I want to get more of these studies that do use fasting lipids because they're going to be more comparable to people who are on a ketogenic diet. But I can tell you what I believe. I believe, and the calculators I have it right now kind of works against an existing study. But I actually believe people who are on a ketogenic diet will probably have a slightly more relaxed scale because they're actually churning out more VLDLs relative to anybody else, right? So proportionately, you're putting out more shifts to power yourself with. And so probably, but don't quote me on this, my opinion will change with the data. Probably if you're under 20, you're really optimal on a ketogenic diet.
Oh,
And probably
there you go.
Probably under 25 is my, and again, this is just a guesstimate. Under 25, you're kind of more in the mid zone.
Nice.
Once you get above 25, there's not a good reason for, I mean, that's something that I want to be a little more mindful of.
Yeah.
But we tend to find that people may end up having higher remnant cholesterol when they're in a challenge event, when they're like sick or they're dealing with even some asymptomatic illnesses can show that.
Interesting. Well, I'm always happy to see my blood results because, you know, I mean, growing up, like I'm sure I could have been diagnosed with some arthritic stuff a few years ago, especially when I was eating like a plant-based diet. I can't say vegan anymore because they say you were never really vegan. So if it's vegan forever or vegan never. So when I was plant-based, the amount of pain and inflammation in my body, I wish I had labs from that time. But just absurd amounts of pain and inflammation. You know, growing up, asthmatic, allergenic, major gut dysbiosis issues, blood sugar dysregulation. You know, sleeping in class all through high school. You know, wake up, eat a burrito, smoke some pot.
How long were you plant-based?
I was plant-based, vegan guy, like in and out of it for about 2 years. Actually, about 2.5 years. At least a few. All right, so it's like when you say that, you know, when you're playing around with these ideas, it's always an all or nothing thing, right? And it starts as like, well, yeah, maybe this is okay. Like maybe I can do without meat for a while. I'll see if I can do it. I wasn't sold on it. And then you go like 3 or 4 weeks. You're like, yeah, I feel kind of good. I can go longer. And it becomes this game of like, I don't know. It was like this whack-a-mole game with my in my mind of just trying to prove myself that I could do this, even though I wasn't even ideologically sold on it. And it really ended up kind of tanking my health in so many ways. It was really sad because even at the time, I'd look around at the vegan folks that I knew, and it was just like, man, this is kind of like a really sick community. Like there was a lot of shoplifting among the vegans that I knew. There was a lot of like, you know, just weird. I don't know, man. It was a strange underbelly in the Santa Cruz, California there, and I luckily ended up coming out of it with my fertility intact and having some babies afterwards. But one thing I did notice, and I've talked about this with my audience many times, before we conceived my daughter, that was our vegan phase, and she had massive dental caries at a year old.
Wow.
Yeah, like just heartbreaking, right? Like beautiful child. She was a healthy girl, but when her teeth started coming out, they were like chalk. Like they just started chipping away. As soon as we started adding a bunch of these fatty foods, you know, we figured out, like, we weren't even vegan at the time. Like, all right, so before we conceived, we were vegan. During the pregnancy, we weren't vegan, but weren't eating very much meat at all. It was just kind of standard, you know, whole foods diet, quinoa, lentils, and then some meat once a week or twice a week because we didn't want to buy it because we didn't know how to prepare it. It was just stupid. She ended up getting dental caries, but as soon as we added in a bunch of butter, liver, heart, animal foods, broth, just these fatty cuts of meat and stuff, her teeth hardened up, and she bites holes in you when she's battling in her wrestling. So her teeth hardened up, and that stopped. And our second kid, usually later children from the mother have more health problems. His teeth were perfectly fine, so no dental caries in him at all. And anecdotal, of course, but we've all noticed a huge difference in change from plant-based diet with a lot of like whole foods, lentils, beans, rice, stuff like that. And the difference is just staggering. Digestion too. It's like you need the fiber, and man, I'm so not sold on fiber these days. But I don't think it's bad, but I'm not sold.
I'm very agnostic on the diet end of things, but I think that there's advice that everybody should be able to agree on, which is find the diet that works for you. Get off the diet that's not working for you, right? Like if you're on a diet and you're suffering in extraordinary health issues, don't let your desire to adhere to it, to be a part of a tribe, whatever it is, whether it's keto, whether it's paleo, whether it's plant-based, whatever it is. If your health is suffering, be mindful of that. And unfortunately, I do feel like I've seen it, and not just with vegans, I've seen it with a lot of different diets, where people will try to stick it out because they feel such an emotional connection to the diet that they're on. And you know what? In total fairness, I see a lot of blood work from a lot of people. I've helped some vegans, but I also have some vegan friends who are super fit. I've seen their blood work. The blood work looks great. They're whole food plant-based, and they're super fit, but they're very mindful of nutrition completion. So they seem to be pretty good at it. I will say for me personally, kind of like the salt, I kind of found myself kicking and screaming my way to where I'm at right now. This current baseline diet, I dropped almonds from my prior baseline diet, and now it's almost entirely animal product based because I myself have some digestion issues. If I'm primarily animal based for like several days, and then I have like say one salad, I pay for it the next morning. And this drives me nuts because I like salad. Like I kind of miss it. I wish I could still do it, but it's I can't ignore the symptoms that I'm actually getting.
So it's just you find that the fiber's not helping you either.
And I don't know. I want to be a good scientist and say, well, maybe there's other things associated with it, but this is typical of an allergic reaction. Is you may have an allergy to something, but if you have low doses of it for a long period of time, you don't really tend to realize it until you do something like a multiple removable diet, where you take everything out, and then you're just like eating something, and then all of a sudden you add something back in, and then if you have a profound unpleasant reaction to it, you go, well, crap, it looks like I might actually have some, problem with this particular food stuff. So unfortunately, that's kind of how I've been feeling about the salads. Maybe there are other plant-based things I could eat, but right now I kind of like to keep my GI tract not having issues.
It seems like a lot of people doing long-term keto end up tending towards less and less vegetables as the years go on.
I think it's also kind of a permission thing. Like as easy as it was for me to give up carbs and go toward fat, I really do have ingrained, you've got to have your fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, same here.
Right.
I always felt like I needed to balance out my plate. If I was going to have meat, you got to have the vegetables because that will be like penance for the sins of eating this meat. It's like that's kind of how.
That's where you get your nutrients, right? That's the obvious place where you get your nutrients. And this isn't to say that you don't get nutrients from it. It's not as to say that I'm sure that I'm ultimately going to be keto the rest of my life, and that there isn't going to be some future version where I have plant products brought back in and so forth. All I can say is this: there was a mental block with me saying, you know what, I'm going to just try animal products exclusively for a while. Yeah, like that. Actually, there really was something that kind of held me up on that.
So speaking of nutrients from plants and stuff, I think it's interesting to share. I got some electrolyte testing as well, and I haven't been using any magnesium, potassium supplementation at all. And so here's the potassium 4.8, reference range is 3.6 to 5.3. Magnesium reference range is 0.66 to 1.03, and it's 0.83. So right in the middle on both of those. I find that interesting. Another thing that I thought when I first started keto was you've got to get things like avocado in for potassium. And, when I first started keto and I was eating, plant foods as well, I definitely seem to have a different reaction than when I'm eating a lot of animal foods. Of course, I'm eating liver, heart, brain, all these other, lots of marrow. So, but yeah, what are your, have you been testing electrolyte levels and stuff like that on your
every test? Yeah. Every test I get includes a comprehensive metabolic panel, which also includes an electrolyte panel. It may be true. I think maybe magnesium is not included with that. It's either magnesium or potassium, but I see my sodium levels every time as well. I do find that serum electrolyte levels don't always reflect the actual intake from the diet, or for that matter, if there's a lack So that's part of what tripped me up for a long time is I thought that my sodium levels were fine because I could see them in my electrolyte panels. So I kept thinking these leg cramps had to be something else because I kept ruling it out. I kept thinking, no, I already get plenty of salt. I already
because your
put
blood
plenty of salt on
needs
my
a certain
food.
amount of these electrolytes, and your body's going to put them there whether you're taking them in or not. So that is an interesting point.
Well, and I forget who it was, but a doctor who is very, very versed on electrolytes explained it to me. He goes, you've got to see this as like the trunk of the tree. Sodium is your body will ditch all kinds of electrolytes before it ditches sodium, and it's because there's a very core component. I'm by no means an expert on electrolytes, but he was explaining there's a very core component with sodium in its hierarchy of need, and that your body is very adamant, and there's nothing it can do to acquire it out of thin air. There's a lot of things the body can do to get rid of excess electrolytes. That's not that big of a problem.
Or the body will actually thin the blood if you don't have enough salt, right? So the body will take water from the blood to balance out the sodium level in the blood if you're not taking enough salt in.
Yeah, there's a real, and this is where it gets a bit complicated, but there's a real discussion on literally the polarization, throughout the bloodstream that becomes extremely relevant to that homeostatic side of what you need to have happen. So it really just came down to me going, you know what? I'm going to start salting to taste. That's what it took. So my salmon, which I already felt like I put plenty of salt on, I was like, I'm going to put so much salt on the salmon that I'm going to find out at what point it actually tastes salty.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to put so much salt on my burger patties, which I already did put a lot of it on there anyway. And I'm going to put so much salt on my eggs, which I already put a lot on my eggs in the first place. And I found out that, no, actually, I could put a lot more on than I thought I could. And then sure enough, I felt great once I salted to taste, and that was just a large amount.
That's usually what I tell people. A lot of people that have been doing keto for a while, even doing it for a few months, and they're just like, yeah, I'm getting leg cramps, I'm having problems sleeping, but I feel really good in general. And I'm just like, man, if I had leg cramps and problems sleeping, I wouldn't think I felt good in general. So it's like, it's great that people are feeling good like that, but you do, after you feel better for a while, you forget, like most people think it's normal to be having like so much gas all the time, or this symptom or that symptom. And I usually end up telling people, like in our keto collective and stuff, I say salt to taste. But if you're doing 3 meals a day, do your best to get like a teaspoon of salt with each meal. And people usually end up finding that it doesn't even taste like too much. And it really helps. And then also pre-workout, I usually tell them like half a teaspoon of salt is a good idea pre-workout, or if you're going to sweat.
You're the only other personality that I met that actually exceeds me in salt. I'm going to have fun bragging about that on Twitter because I get a lot of flack on Twitter for that.
Yeah, I do like 3 teaspoons.
Like I found the guy who has more salt than I do comfortably. That's why I remember I was watching one of your videos and you had like a little pile of pink salt with your food. I was like, yes. Yeah. Somebody else is also plenty generous.
I do a lot of salt. So this morning with my breakfast, which I can do 1 meal a day, but I've been squeezing 2 in just because I've been trying to keep the calories up. I've been gaining a little bit of weight. And I think today I'll probably edge out at 4 teaspoons of salt for the whole day. Because this morning I put a teaspoon of salt on my steak, and then I was just grabbing it, and then it's like, that doesn't look like enough. And I must have put another teaspoon and a half on it. So I think I had 2.5 teaspoons with this morning meal. And I'll probably end up doing another 2 teaspoons today. So, if anybody says you're a weirdo for how much salt you eat, just point at me. Like, this weirdo eats even more salt than I do.
Yeah, I'll have fun with that.
And he's not dead yet. Cool. But he is bald. Voluntarily bald. See, I got some peach fuzz still. Not totally bald yet, guys. Not yet. All my vegan fans. Not bald yet. Hashtag. Dave, dude, this has been awesome. I'd keep going, but I'm trying to keep these a little shorter these days because,
I do have a hard stop in 6 minutes anyway.
Yeah.
I was actually about to mention that.
There you go.
I got another meeting that I got to come off to. So,
well, Dave,
but as always, Tristan, you're a super interesting person. I love chatting it up with you. We always have good chats.
You complete me, Dave. No, really though, I love like the work that Dave's doing. There are a few people whose work right now, in different regards, there are many people whose work I respect immensely. I shouldn't say a few. There are a few people whose work I'm completely fascinated with. Dave Feldman's on the top of that list. So you guys got to make sure to follow Dave. He's at Dave Keto on Twitter. Follow him on the Twitter, and he's still got. If you guys want to make some money, for those of you who if you don't, you guys want to make some moolah. Dave is giving out a bounty on cholesterol. Dave, go ahead and give him the challenge one more time.
Yeah, so the challenge is I've got a couple of studies that show people who have high LDL cholesterol, the so-called bad cholesterol, don't have high cardiovascular disease when they have high HDL cholesterol and low triglycerides. So if you can bring me a study that do show that people who have high LDL cholesterol will have high cardiovascular disease, and by high, I mean just above average cardiovascular disease, so long as they also likewise stratify having high HDL cholesterol and low triglycerides, then that completes the bounty. There are a few other details of rules. Check the cholesterolcode.com, for example, have at least a reasonable number of participants like the other studies do, and don't have some weird modeling or adjustments. I really, really hate those studies where it's like, well, after we mangled this data set, now we actually ended up with the numbers we wanted. I don't like any of that stuff. So obviously it's got to be fairly clean like these other studies were. And if you can, bring it to me first come, first serve. I have $1,000 budget that I've allocated for this, so I could give this out 3 times.
Joe says he says we want meat, not money. So if you give steaks, maybe my audience would go for it.
I will pay in steaks. I will have to subtract from the shipping and handling, but I'm sure I can make that happen. But look, at the end of the day, good science, we're going to fight bad science with good science. We don't want to fight bad science with bad science.
Right. Epidemiology. Look, this epidemiology proves my assumptions. Therefore, it's good epidemiology. Right. I hate it. I can't deal with it. Stop repping the epidemiology, guys. Doesn't matter if it tells you high fat's good or bad. We need to slay the epidemiology dragon and get that out of the conversation. And we need, I think this N of 1 stuff that you're doing is fantastic. And all right, so you've got a Patreon, right? So if you guys out there got to understand, it's not cheap to get all this lab work. These pieces of paper, they cost money, and you got to give your precious bodily fluids to get these papers. And Dave over here is working his butt off for everybody out there, and he's sacrificing sometimes his health to do these experiments. And his wife is a saint, clearly.
She is a saint.
A patroness saint. His wife is like the Mother Teresa of keto, essentially, basically, but better. And check out his Patreon. If you guys go to cholesterolcode.com, you can find more of Dave's work. Definitely suggest helping Dave out. Dave, you down for that Bitcoin or other crypto for donations? People are asking.
Yeah, actually, I put that in there too. I put some addresses for Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think it is. No. So now if people want to contribute that way, it's great. For what it's worth, truly, almost all of it goes straight to costs because the blood work is a bit pricey, but I do believe that this is going to ultimately help out the community a lot to just have this data set. The one plus of being a professional guinea pig is there's really this kind of complete, it's a bit cathartic to really expose so much of yourself, but literally everything that I eat is recorded and all of the blood work is ultimately going to be all open source.
That's so cool. So you guys gotta help out the man Dave here. He's you're working on a book too, right?
Yep.
When's this book coming out?
Well, that's a longer story. It kind of depends on all that we're going to determine that we fit in, but that comes back to what I negotiate with the publisher.
Yeah.
But it's getting worked out, and it's going to have a whole lot of behind-the-scenes stories that make it a little more juicy. There's a lot of interesting things that went down over this story, I guess you could say.
Yeah, Saga.
That got me to where
Saga's a good one.
Yeah, Saga's
Dave
probably
Feldman's cholesterol saga. That could be. Even that doesn't live up to to the grandiosity of these experiments. But all right, man. Well, work hard on that book, and I'd love to have you on again once. You mentioned you're doing another experiment now. Is there anything you want to say about that before you go?
I'll say it's looking pretty good. Ooh, that's all I'll say.
Juicy. All right, man. Well, you are required to come back. We're putting a bounty on Dave. Dave's got to come back here, or else I don't know. We'll send trolls. I don't know. Dave, you're coming back on the show.
I'll be definitely coming back.
That's a demand. All right, my friend. Well, thanks a lot for hanging out, Dave. I know you got to go, so I'll let you go, and then maybe I'll say goodbye to the audience here. And cholesterolcode.com. I'll put a link to his site down below. See you later, Dave.
Thanks for having me on, Tristan.
Yeah, man. I look forward to talking soon. We'll be in touch. I'll send you an email. Let's do some more, man.
All right. Catch you a bit.
Have a good one. There it goes. There he goes, Dave Feldman. Ariana wants to come get attention. Ryder's downstairs bashing the world. And the rain is ruining my afternoon plans. Ryder says, rain, wah wah! Wah wah, you gonna go play in the rain, Ryder? Hey, you know what's cool about this blazer that I built? It's actually a Jimmy. You know what's cool about this Jimmy is when it's raining outside, I still don't have to put the top down because I took all the carpet out and I just got Monster Liner all throughout it. So it doesn't even matter if it gets wet. So I've got a few errands I got to run, but I think I'm going to wait for this rain to die down. I might have a steak. I'm going to go move around. I'm going to jump around the trampoline a bit, maybe do a little workout. But everybody, thank you so much for watching. The first hour was fun. Talked a little bit about Shawn Baker's heart versus Dr. Joe Kahn's mental yoga. We talked a little bit about the inconsistencies and the argumentation being brought by a lot of these plant-based zealots out there. And we had some laughs. We had some fun. We saw some pictures of the Ubermensch, the vegan Ubermensch, Dr. Greger. And then we talked to the amazing Dave Feldman. So, the Keto Collective that we're doing this month has been going really well so far. Shout out to everyone in our Keto Collective group. I'll check up on you guys in the Discord in a bit. I think we might do an October Keto Collective. We've had some interest, but there is a link in the description if you want to join the next Keto and Carnivore Collective. You can just hit us up via the website. Thanks so much for supporting the show, guys, and for all the homies throwing out the super chats, chucking some shekels at your humble, meager host over here. So, yeah, guys, remember, you're way more than what you eat. Your diet is obviously going to inform your health dramatically, but what's so much more important is why you're doing what you're doing, right? A lot of people are trying to lose weight. A lot of people are trying to get off the addictive patterns with food. But where do these addictive patterns come from? Why do we submit to these addictive patterns consistently? All right, we got to ask ourselves the right question and formulate a lifestyle that's enjoyable and sustainable long term. If you want to lose the weight, short-term diets are long-term failures. You need long-term lifestyle changes. You got to enjoy what you're doing. And it's more than just diet. So anyways, guys, you want to support the channel, we got the book, the Ketogenic Edge Cookbook. You'll find this at primaledgehealth.com. There's a link down in the bio or the description down below. It's available as an ebook as well. And hey, you're way more than what you eat, guys. It's not what comes out of your mouth that defiles you. Or rather, it's not what comes in your mouth that defiles you. It's what comes out of your mouth. So why are you doing what you're doing? And what's the point, right? Your worldview, what you believe about where you come from, who you are, and where you're going. These things are going to inform your behaviors and your actions far more than the little minor decisions like what foods you put in your body. So anyways, Eat Meat, Make Families, guys. Oh, yeah, we got T-shirts. Eat Meat, Make Families shirts, hoodies, and what's it called? Tanks on the website as well. I'm out of here, guys. Eat meat, make families.